investors isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 25th of February. Today, Lee Anderson is suspended from the Conservative Party as Tories come to grips with Islamophobia claims.
Private security is deployed for MPs as police warn of a radicalising moment.
2 years on from Russia's invasion, Boris Johnson has been to the front line, reaffirming support for Ukraine.
In spite of everything, those gallant, heroic Ukrainians are fighting on, and I've got absolutely no doubt that they are going to win.
Donald Trump defeats Nikki Haley in her home state of South Carolina, putting him a step closer to a 2020 rematch.
I was just informed that we got double the number of votes that has ever been received in the great state of South Carolina.
And they're the backbone of many communities, local buses. But with costs rising, are they under threat?
Good morning. There was Six Nations glory for Scotland as they retained the Calcutta Cup at England's expense at Murrayfield. In the cricket, meanwhile, India are providing stubborn resistance on day 3 of the 4th test in Ranchi. We look ahead to this afternoon's Carabao Cup final at Wembley.
Oh, good morning. We've got some mist and fog patches, quite chilly first thing, but heavy rain already across the southwest. Find out all the details for the day ahead coming up in the programme.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, I do like it when celebs do something for charity.
OK,
And
yes,
actually,
I like that too.
A lot of them do stuff on the quiet, which is very good. However, I wonder if Ed Sheeran's gone a step too far. This is according to the Sunday Mirror this morning. Good news for a charity shop who reckons they can... it's East Anglia's Children's Hospices charity shop. And they reckon they can really improve their takings.
Oh, yeah?
Because he's donated, apparently, old socks and underpants.
Oh, no. We draw the line
And so
at socks and underpants.
Apparently they've raised nearly £30,000 by selling some of them on eBay. Wonder who to.
What, old pants and socks?
Now, they say they hope his undies, plus other things like leather bracelets and a baseball cap, will fly off the shelves at its store in Beccles in Suffolk.
Well, I understand the bracelet and the hat.
Why
but
would you give
you've got
your
to draw the line at your underwear. That has to go in the bin.
I don't think I could give used underwear to
Well, absolutely
anybody.
not.
No matter how many times it's been washed.
No.
Not even a pair of socks.
I think, especially for women, you definitely couldn't do that.
No.
But, no.
So that's
I'm not sure about that. But lovely that it's going to charity, I suppose.
Just think somebody's just ordered one of his staff to say, find some old things, and they've just sort of pulled a load of pants out.
Oh, dear. No, you'd have to put a ban on that. Not sure about that one, Ed, but...
So what would you like to buy at a charity shop from your favourite celebrity? What would be worth spending a bit of money on? And at the same time, raise good money for charity as well. Do let us know, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now to our top story this morning, and former Conservative Deputy Chairman Lee Anderson has been suspended from the Conservative Party after refusing to apologise for comments aimed at London Mayor Sadiq Khan.
Well, Lee Anderson said the London mayor had given the capital away and was being controlled by Islamists. Sadiq Khan had this to say yesterday.
Look, these comments from a senior Conservative are Islamophobic, are anti-Muslim and are racist.
And swiftly in the afternoon, Anderson was dropped, issuing this statement. I fully accept they had no option but to suspend the whip in these circumstances. However, I'll continue to support the government's efforts to call out extremism in all its forms, be that anti-Semitism or Islamophobia.
Well, it comes today as the Sunday Telegraph and Sunday Times report some MPs are being given extra security because of the rising extremism threat.
Well, let's get some reaction now from political commentator Jack Rowlett. Very good to see you this morning. Jack, what do you make of all of this then? Do you think Lee Anderson's comments were worthy of suspension?
Yes, I do. I think they were absolutely disgraceful. I mean, it's pretty rare for me to side with Sadiq Khan, but I absolutely agree with him that this was an Islamophobic comment by Lee Anderson. I think it's absolutely appalling that we've got to the point where senior Conservative figures feel it's okay to say these things. So much of politics is kind of grey areas, and actually you need debate, and you don't want people to be shut down for things they say in the vast majority of cases. But actually, this is a binary. Someone is either on the side of Islamists, giving London away to Islamists, or they're not. And in this case, they're not. It's a conspiracy theory. And it's not as if they're short of legitimate reasons to attack Sadiq Khan. He's totally failed on crime, totally failed on housing, totally failed on transport. And by resorting to these sorts of prejudiced conspiratorial attacks, Lee Anderson is taking the debate away from scrutinising and raising the legitimate failures of Sadiq Khan as Mayor of London and moving it back on to Tory infighting. And we know that actually voters hate this infighting. And whenever the attention is drawn back on to the divisions within the Conservative Party, their poll rating falls, support for them falls, and it makes it harder for the Conservatives to push through with their agenda. And it really does make you wonder. You know, we hear a lot of criticism, some of it very valid, I think, that we have a Conservative government, but we don't have Conservative policies being pushed through. You know, the tax rate is extremely high at the moment, for example. And there are lots of different groups that are blamed for this. Actually, it does make you wonder if really it's just the low quality of individual that is at the forefront of the Conservative Party right now.
Yeah,
and
but
the British right really needs a rethink.
Have we reached a situation where someone can't criticise the impact that Islamists, by which he means Islamic extremists, Islamic fundamentalists, you can't criticise the impact they're having on politics without being branded Islamophobic?
No, I don't think we have at all. There's a massive difference between criticising Islamism, criticising that extremism. I think there's a lot of valid criticism that could be made there, and we've seen the threats that have been made to MPs. We've seen a lot of the kind of threats that have been made to the Jewish community as well in the aftermath of the October the 7th attacks. But there's a big difference between criticising that, drawing attention to that, and making prejudiced conspiratorial comments about Sadiq Khan, because he is not in the pocket of Islamists. There is no evidence to suggest that. He has not given the capital away to his mates, as Lee Anderson put it, his mates, the Islamists, because he's not on their side. And we know that when there are rising threats to politicians, it's dangerous and disgraceful to say those sorts of things, to raise those sorts of conspiracy theories, because it increases the threat on Sadiq Khan, who is not an Islamist. So it's absolutely about making that distinction, about saying you can criticize Islamism, you can draw attention to it, but you can't raise conspiracy theories that create threats to innocent people.
Context to all of this is important, isn't it, Jack? It comes as reports in the Sunday Times and the Sunday Telegraph this morning are talking about private security being deployed for MPs as threats, extremism threats, are rising.
Yeah, and I think it would be really sad if we see the level of access that people have to politicians in this country fall. You look at other countries, look at America, for example, people don't have anywhere near the level of access to their representatives that we do here. And actually, if we don't take control of this, if we don't reduce the threats to MPs, if we don't take control of the discourse and encourage people to be responsible with their language as well as with their actions, then actually we're just going to see more threats to MPs. And the end result of that is going to be that people will have less access to their representatives and won't be represented as well. And I think that would be such a sad thing for the United Kingdom.
I know we haven't had an apology as such from Lee Anderson. But he has said, I understand the difficult position that I've put both the Chief Whip and the Prime Minister in with regard to my comments. I fully accept they had no option but to suspend the Whip in these circumstances. It's not an apology, but it's an acknowledgement, isn't it?
Well, it's not an apology, though, and I think that's the crucial thing. If Lee Anderson were to apologise fully, withdraw his comments, then there would be grounds to let him back into the party. But I think when you do something like this, when you bring the party into disrepute, quite frankly, really you do need to draw a clear line and say, actually, no, you need to apologise, you need to withdraw those comments, otherwise we're not letting you back in. Because otherwise it will become a scandal again, and the whole purpose of withdrawing the Whip from him in the first place will be kind of nullified, because then attention will be drawn back on the Tory infighting, because there will be lots of people within the Tory party who think Lee Anderson's comments were disgraceful, who won't want him to be let back in without an apology. So I don't see how Rishi Sunak can do anything but continue to leave Lee Anderson out in the cold until we get a proper apology, if indeed we do get one at all.
Do you think it could be a possibility that he actually goes over to join the Reform Party? Because apparently he's been offered a place in the Reform Party by Nigel Farage.
Well, yeah, this is what we're hearing in the papers this morning. I think the jury's still out on that one. I think Lee Anderson certainly comes across as fairly committed to the Conservative cause. So I'm not sure if he will be defecting to Reform UK anytime soon. And certainly looking at the electoral dynamics in his seat, I don't think Reform UK, I don't think he's going to do any better with Reform UK than he would do with Conservatives. It looks like that seat is very much going back to Labour at the next general election. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that one. But certainly if he continues with his decision not to make an apology, perhaps Reform UK are going to be the only party who are prepared to take him on.
OK. Jack Rowlett, good to see you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
7 minutes past 6. Now, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been to Ukraine, marking the second anniversary of Russia's invasion.
Yes, Mr Johnson spoke exclusively to GB News, to the former Ukrainian ambassador to the United Kingdom, where he reiterated Ukraine's determination to win the war.
Hi, folks. I'm here on the second anniversary of Vladimir Putin's barbaric invasion of Ukraine. I'm here in Kyiv, where, in spite of everything, those gallant, heroic Ukrainians are fighting on. And I've got absolutely no doubt that they are going to win. And I think that with the support of the West, provided we do the right thing, give them the right support, militarily, politically, and economically, the courage of Ukrainians, their natural determination to fight for their homeland will prevail. But I'm very happy to be joined talking to GB News by a friend who I've worked with for years, a distinguished former ambassador, former foreign minister of Ukraine, former ambassador to London, Vadim Prystaiko. Vadim, how do you see things 2 years after this evil invasion? Are you still confident your country is going to win?
Thank you, Boris. You've seen yourself that, unbelievably so, but Ukrainians sort of feel that it's not just spring coming to Kyiv, today is quite warm in Kyiv, but there is the hope, right? Maybe because people like you and so many foreign dignitaries came, and they're coming not empty-handed. They're coming with ideas how to get back to Ukraine, to bring it up to the agenda of the world, how to bring the weapons, how to ramp up sanctions, how to get Russians' money be frozen all around the globe to help Ukraine to actually gain territory and regain hope.
And if you had a message to GB News viewers about what you think the UK should be doing in particular, is there one thing you'd pick out?
I believe that's my years in the UK were the pinnacle of my career, not because I was happy to be in London, which is great, I mean, by itself, because of this great support of the people there. And the government, people, regions, everywhere I felt it. I've seen Ukrainian flags. I remember everything we've been done in the parliaments, or even just talking to the soldier or person on the street who was inviting the Ukrainian refugees. All of this mounts out to what we felt in the UK. And it was actually being translated all over the Europe. You were pushing the Europeans and sometimes our friends over the pond to do more and more. Look at where we are now, supported by Germans, supported by France, supported by all our allies. We wouldn't be there without the UK's initial push.
Thank you, Roger. And don't forget, folks, although things look tough for Ukraine and have looked tough for the last 2 years, the simple facts are that they've kicked Vladimir Putin's armies out of more than half of the territory that they originally occupied. About 315,000 Russian troops have been killed or injured, a ratio of probably 7 to 1 when you compare it with what the Ukrainian armed forces have suffered. They've taken out thousands and thousands of Russian tanks, 40% of Russia's Black Sea fleet, and yet Ukraine's exports are now back up to pre-war levels. So I've got absolutely no doubt that with the right support from the West, Ukraine can win. And it's vital in the months ahead that we give them that support. This is an unconventional report, but here we are in Kyiv on the sad second anniversary with a Ukrainian population that, in my view, is absolutely determined still to win, and they're going to win.
Well, Boris Johnson there for GB News, which is something I never thought I'd say.
Is that the first thing that he's done for us? Yeah.
I think it may well be. May well be.
There we go.
But it's interesting. He's so passionate about Ukraine.
He really is. He's so popular there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hugely.
Hugely popular. And to be fair to him, he is steadfast in his support. Has been since day one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of this war. So hats off to him in that respect for being on the front line there and bringing that to us.
Now, it is 16 minutes past 6. Let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning.
And the UK has launched a fresh wave of attacks against Houthi rebels in Yemen. The Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has confirmed RAF Typhoons joined US allies in attacking various missile and drone launching sites. It's the fourth set of attacks that the UK has taken part in response to Houthi attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden.
The body of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been given over to his mother. He unexpectedly died in prison 9 days ago. His death certificate suggests it was natural causes. His spokeswoman says it's still not clear whether authorities will allow relatives to hold a funeral the way his family wants and the way he deserves. Natural causes. I mean, that's so unbelievably unlikely. But there you go. It's what they're sticking to. Well, what else are they going to say?
I watched the documentary. Have you seen the documentary?
No.
Now that is my biggest recommendation. Sunday homework for you all.
Right.
Alexei Navalny documentary.
Is that Netflix?
Might be on the BBC and it's also on Amazon.
Oh, right.
Very good.
It will be on both.
I think it's on both.
Is it?
Well, I watched it on Amazon.
Oh, well, that...
so you'll be able to watch it as well.
Yes, I've got that. But I haven't got the BBC.
He hasn't got the BBC.
Amazon and Netflix and GB News is all I've got on the
telly. That's all you need. Trilogy. But it is the best documentary I've ever seen. It's so haunting. The whole family, including his daughter and his wife, and himself actually, talk about him dying one day. And, you know, his daughter, because he did go back, of course, to Russia, didn't he, after being poisoned with Novichok. He went over to Germany. He returned to Russia, and loads of people said to him at the time, what are you doing going back to Russia? This could end, you know, only one way.
Sting operation, so we were told. Anyway.
Well, yes, and that's what's revealed in the documentary.
Oh, does it?
It's really good, yeah. But his daughter, who was probably about 20 years old at the time, said if she were him, she'd have to return to Russia because it's home and he loves his country.
Yeah.
It's a lovely, well, not a lovely documentary, but it's very powerful.
Someone who's not at home, because she seems to have made a home over here.
Oh, yeah.
Kylie Minogue.
Oh, right. That's a real 180 there.
It is a total 180, but she's in the Sunday... Weirdly, I know the Sunday people in the Sunday Mirror are what you would call sister papers, but they are practically, apart from
It's
the
a bit
front...
spooky this
Apart
morning.
from the front page, they are identical. I mean, same headlines, same pictures. I mean...
Yeah, I get that one.
Look at that. Page 3.
Weird, right? We just said that. We were like, are those papers exactly the same?
Never
on the
noticed
inside?
that. They've run out of staff. But anyway, Kylie, she's 55 and single and loving it. I feel really sorry for Kylie. I mean, what a
How
talent.
is she single?
She's just been so unlucky in love, hasn't she?
Oh, she's
never
so
had-
talented and so beautiful.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. Maybe she's too much, too perfect. You wouldn't want to
you've-
be with that much perfection.
You've managed it.
I'll stop. So have you, darling.
She loves it.
Say more, say more.
Anyway,
No,
right.
I reckon that's what it is. Also, can I just say it's a generational divide. When you say Kylie, I think Kylie Jenner.
Do you?
Yeah. And you think Kylie Minogue.
Oh, yeah. There's only
I
one
was like,
Kylie.
oh, Kylie Jenner.
No,
Kylie Minogue.
no.
There you go.
Oh, there's only one Kylie.
Well, there's two, technically.
She should be so lucky. Now, to the United States, and former President Donald Trump has defeated Nikki Haley in the South Carolina Republican primary overnight, which is important for various reasons, including the fact it's a home state.
Well, Trump is now the firm favourite to claim the Republican nomination.
But now there's a spirit that I have never seen. We ran 2 great races, but there's never been a spirit like this. And I just want to say that I have never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now.
However, Nikki Haley is not going anywhere yet as she continues with her campaign for the nomination.
I'm a woman of my word. This has never been about me or my political future. We need to beat Joe Biden in November. I don't believe Donald Trump can beat Joe Biden.
Well, let's talk to the Professor of International Politics at the Clinton Institute at the University College Dublin. Scott Lucas, good to see you this morning. Does Nikki... Look, on that final point, does Nikki Haley have a point? Can Donald Trump beat Joe Biden?
The November's race could go either way. I mean, that's what the polls consistently show. I think the reason why Nikki Haley is staying in the race through Super Tuesday, which will be in 9 days' time, where you'll have 1/3 of the Republican delegates will be chosen within 24 hours, is because she and those Republicans who support her do see Trump as not being as well positioned as she would be to defeat Joe Biden, and the polls bear that out. But I think even more important is that Haley and that section of the Republican Party, they see Trump as a threat to the party itself, which is not unified, which is very fragmented. And indeed, they not only disagree with Trump regarding foreign policy, U.S. domestic policy, they see Trump as a threat to those policies and indeed as a threat to the U.S. system himself. They see Trump, in other words, as being very, very divisive, not just for the country, but for the party, the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan, of George Bush, and of the younger George Bush. And that's why she'll continue to press ahead for the next 9 days at least.
Scott, how significant is what we saw last night? Because I understand it's the first time that a GOP candidate for president has lost their home state in a primary.
I think, it's a marker that Nikki Haley, to say the least, has a very slim chance of winning the nomination.
Oh, line's gone.
We
Do
just lost
apologise.
connection.
There you go. These things happen. It's a Sunday. No one can be bothered to put another 50p in the meter. That's what it is. Not to worry. Well, we got the gist of it. I mean, it is significant. South Carolina is significant, actually, because it's one of those key indicator states as well for who wins in all of this.
Yeah.
It does look inevitable that he's going to be the candidate.
Oh, absolutely. And he'll be buoyed, won't he, by his
Oh, of course
performance
he
in
will.
these primaries. Well, you can see, can't you, the confidence. Did you see last night he actually said he can't wait to tell Joe Biden in November, you're fired? Because obviously he used to present The Apprentice, didn't he?
Yes.
In the US. So he's awfully confident, is Donald Trump.
I suppose you've got to give that impression, though. Are the Democrats still confident that Joe Biden is the right man for the job?
It is astonishing over here, isn't it, looking over at what's going on over the pond. That's the best they've got. Joe Biden, who is 81,
Yes, I
I
think
believe,
so.
and Donald Trump, who is 77?
77, 78, something like that.
Yeah, it's the very best they've
and-
got to offer.
Yeah, Joe Biden, who is seeing a decline, if I put it that way.
Politely.
And Donald Trump, who's engulfed in legal problems. It just wouldn't happen over here. And it just seems extraordinary, and that will, in effect, be the most powerful man on the planet.
Where's the fresh talent?
We do need some fresh blood. Mind you, we need it on this side of the pond as well, actually. We need some new talent coming through, don't we? I think everything's feeling a bit tired.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Reinvigorated politics. It's your generation that needs to do it.
Yeah, not me, but
No, not
I'm
you.
sure somebody else. I don't know who would want to do it. I think it's the most difficult job. And then you've got all the security threats now as well. I think it's really tough.
It's a bit of a thankless task.
It is a bit,
isn't it?
yes.
Never mind. I'll tell you what is not a thankless task.
Tell me.
And that's being a weather forecaster. Because, I mean, particularly being British, we want to know exactly what is going on. And I have to say this morning, the fog, if you're thinking of driving anywhere early doors this morning, don't.
Oh.
The fog on the M1 this morning was horrific. I mean, dangerous, really, really dangerous.
Well, I'm glad you're here in one piece.
Like, it was, honestly, slow going. Let's get the details with Greg.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got some heavy rain across southern parts of England and Wales today, turning quite windy as well, but brighter for many of us. This morning, a mixed picture. We've got the heavy rain across parts of Devon, Cornwall, southwest Wales, slowly pushing its way eastwards through the day. Elsewhere, some mist and fog to start with, but this should lift and break. And then there'll be plenty of sunny spells, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. A few showers possible here and perhaps northern England later, but the winds will increase across southern coastal counties of England, perhaps Wales too. Gales for some. Outbreaks of heavy rain could lead to some localised flooding. Temperatures near average for the time of year, so in any sunshine, not feeling too bad further north. As we go through into the evening time, we'll see the heavy rain continue, perhaps transferring more into southeastern areas with the rain becoming lighter across the southwest. Elsewhere, clear spells, temperatures dropping below freezing under the clearest skies in Scotland, holding up under the cloud and the strengthening wind further south and east. So a grey start to Monday here. Outbreaks of rain generally holding on across the far southeast, but eventually clearing later on in the day. Elsewhere, a bright day, mixture of sunny spells, scattered showers. Best of the sunshine across the north and the west of the UK. Quite a keen northeasterly breeze for parts of England, particularly near the coast, which will make it feel quite chilly for the time of year. Temperatures on face value generally near average for the time of year.
Now, still to come, under threat, a rural bus service in East Yorkshire offering essential travel and recreational trips to the elderly. We'll be talking about that next. This is Breakfast on GB News.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Look, you're a respected royal biographer, and there are so many people who are on the sort of royal gravy train, if you will, people who are making a career out of gossip and speculation. But yours very much built on confidence and sources and fact. And you don't offer an opinion that often inside your book. But when you do, I suppose, therefore, it carries a bit more weight. So when you say that the Sussexes are easily offended and, you know, effectively pretty prickly, what do you mean and what have you based that on?
Well, on numerous their riposte to any given situation in their books, in their TV interviews. And let's not forget, I mean, a lot of TV interviews, 6-part Netflix drama, Spare, you see time and again that they feel that they feel resentful. They feel that, you know, something hasn't gone their way and that this is part of some sort of calculated campaign against them. And actually, I mean, when you've got a fast-moving story, I mean, for example, in my book, I go into those frantic hours after the death of the Queen, and everybody's trying to sort themselves out. And Harry writes in his book Spare how you know, no one will return his calls and he can't get through to anyone, and it's sort of it's just all a bit me. And actually, the whole kind of royal machine, if you like, is a team effort. And I just think it's very sad because, you know, Harry and Meghan, they had such potential. And now when we do tend to hear from them, on a royal matter, it's just to say how miserable they were being royal. And that was, you know, they were royal for whatever it was, 600-700 days. They're post-royal now for over twice that time.
Envisage a scenario where they're back in England and they're back in royal life?
I can't envisage a situation where they're back, as it were, as part of the sort of royal working unit, but I could certainly see it becoming a kind of normal thing for them to keep.
Now, a charity which has played a crucial role in helping the elderly in East Yorkshire since 1970 is looking to grow its team of volunteers so it can expand its reach.
Yes, Beverley Community Lift offers vital transport services for both essential travel and recreational trips with the aim of alleviating, thank you, social isolation for hundreds of older residents in the region.
Be kind, she's hardly had any sleep tonight.
It's true.
She was out partying.
I actually wasn't, just so you know.
She was.
I was vibing.
Anna Riley's got the story for you.
Hello, Steve. Get on the bus. Beverley Community Lift, the charity that's been transporting elderly, disabled and isolated people around East Yorkshire for more than 50 years, providing door-to-door travel for shopping trips, medical appointments and days out. It fills a gap in a rural community where buses are scarce and taxis are costly. Pensioners Mary Webber and Carol Smith depend on the service.
You're out in the boondocks, I keep saying, where I am anyway. There's no transport in Leconfield, except we have no shop, we have no post office. Where, Leconfield's got nothing, no pub even. You don't want to keep asking people to do shopping for you or take you shopping even. And you want to be independent as much as you can. And this gives you independence.
It's good for hospital visits. You always know where to drop you, where to go, where to pick you up. So I can't speak highly enough of it. I truly don't know what I would have done without it.
The charity provides 2,500 subsidised journeys for passengers each year. Its volunteers like Stephen Priestley and Sheila Turnbull are at the heart.
The transport, some of it round here is a bit hit and miss. You can have a good laugh with all the people that you take round, because there's quite a good few characters that you take out and about.
A lot of people on there that sit and chat, and they might not see people from one day to the next. So it gets them about and about and makes me feel like I'm doing something back for the community.
Manager Fiona Wales is calling for more volunteers so that Beverley Community Lift can serve a wider area.
We can't do what we do without the volunteers that we have in place. Without us, you've got an awful lot of people who cannot actually physically leave their own home. As we saw through the pandemic, just how isolating not being able to get out of your own home is. If you live on your own, we're your vital link, really, to be able to access shops, to get to your GP, to meet a friend for coffee, just to get a social life.
This charity is a lifeline for the 450 over 60s that use the service not just for a lift, but also for companionship. Anna Riley, GB News.
Well, these sort of schemes operate across the country, of course. One of them is Chatterboss, and the chairman of that group, Sir Gerald Aitcher, joins us now. It's good to see you this morning. I mean, what is astounding with this, I think, is that so many people rely on it, and yet you are so reliant, entirely reliant on volunteers.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning, Ellie. You're absolutely right. And of course, the challenges that are happening in Yorkshire are actually happening all around the country at the moment. And it's been made worse, I suppose, by the problems through the pandemic, when many of the reserves of charities like ours and like of everyone would have been severely hit. But the problem isn't going to go away. The problem, we've got to find ways of solving it. And they seem in Yorkshire to have a good business plan. They've got a good bunch of customers that need their services. They've got volunteers. They clearly need to get more volunteers. They need to spread their wings a bit, as they say, and they need to use as much charity elbow as they can to get other charities to support them. And of course, that's not easy. We found this ourselves at Chatterbus. During the financial crisis, money is directed elsewhere. Money is directed, quite rightly, to people who can't heat their homes, who can't put food on the table. And in some ways, rural transport has taken a back seat. So yes, they've got a real challenge. And looking at other models, looking at models like ourselves, there will be a way through this. But as I said, it's a challenge. But what they're doing absolutely right is a service to the community. And that is clear to see. And they are a lifeline. The Chatterbus is a lifeline. People can't do without it once it's there. And people get on the bus and they won't speak to somebody until the next day they get on the bus or sometime future. And that's a terrible indictment of society today. So yes, absolutely, they've got a problem. Yes, there is a way through, and it just does need support from everybody in the community.
And as you say, travel and transport is so important because it is what connects us. Because without transport, and those who are experiencing transport poverty, perhaps they can't drive anymore, taxis are too costly, they find themselves totally isolated, don't they? They can't get to the shops, they can't get to the doctors, they can't go and be social with people. It is really central to a person's lifestyle and their happiness, ultimately.
Yes, and, you know, maybe it's a cliche to say it's a lifeline, but it isn't. It is a lifeline. And we found this in Cobham when we looked to start our Chatterbus service. We found people were being isolated in their homes. Cobham is an affluent place, but like all affluent places, there is poverty. And in fact, that poverty is harder to find in an affluent place than in a place where it's much more rife. And so you often have to seek it out. And our problem here, well, we had two problems. First of all, people were isolated in their homes and there was nowhere for them to get ordinary shopping, day-to-day clothes and so on, because all the shops in the Cobham High Street had become boutiques and coffee chains and restaurants. And the nearest shopping area was the Brooklands Retail Park, and all buses would go north-south and not out to the west, which is where people wanted to go. And so they were being isolated in their own homes, not just those that were living hand to mouth, but also those who had to give up driving because of age or because of infirmity. And so this was a problem that we sought to alleviate. And we've now been going 9 years. They gave us 6 months. They said, this will never work. And we've now been going 9 years. And we have become part of the community. We're at the heart of the community. And that's where rural transport has to be.
Absolutely. Look, all power to your elbow, Sir Gerald. Really good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great initiative, isn't it?
Well, look, and we're all going to rely on stuff like that at some point. We need to support it.
No, we absolutely do. Do let us know if that's something that's in your local area or perhaps it's something you think you need. Do let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Let's see what Aidan McGee's got for us in the world of sport this morning.
Good morning to you both. How are you?
Morning.
Yeah, we're all right.
Good. I'm not sure England are great this morning, though. I mean, I did predict yesterday.
In the Calcutta Cup.
I know, I did predict yesterday. I like to remind you when I get a prediction right. It doesn't happen very often.
No.
But I did... that's why I don't bet, you see. I did predict that England might struggle in Murrayfield or at Murrayfield, and I thought that it might depend on whether they could handle this hell of a talent that Scotland have in their ranks. Duhan van der Merwe, hat-trick. He scored of tries yesterday against England and really put them to the sword. 30-21 it finished. Now, what I'd say about this tournament, Stephen, is that every match so far, and it started 3 weeks ago, has gone with form. Nothing has really confounded the predictions, if you like. Scotland in reasonable form. They won in Wales in the first match. They gave France a hell of a run, and England yesterday. I mean, that's their fourth consecutive win over England. If you consider that England won 9 in a row against Scotland between 2009 and 2017, so they've really found a way of reversing that. And I think I've got in my notes in front of me, Queen Victoria was the monarch when Scotland last managed 4 wins in a row against England in this competition in 1896. So they really are bucking the trend. And elsewhere, Ireland beat Wales 31-7. I still predict that Ireland will go on to win this tournament. They kicked off against France a few weeks ago on the Friday night on opening evening in Marseille and did really well. And I could take them to win it. And France plays this afternoon.
Yeah. Should we take a look at the cricket?
Yes, an update on that. They're at lunch at the moment. England have established a 46-run lead after the first innings. They found it really hard to get Cardiff out. But Jimmy Anderson, I think it was his 698th Test wicket. I mean, he just shows no sign of abating, does he, at the age of 41. But lunch at the moment. I felt that if England could go into the second innings with a roundabout of a 50-run lead, I think that gives them a big chance. We can't predict what the wicket is going to do. It hasn't jumped around as much as we quite expected. But in that fourth Test, England in a good position to try and square the series now, and all to play for this afternoon. They're going to resume after lunch and try and get some mileage on the clock.
Fingers crossed. Just a quick word about the Carabao Cup. It's Chelsea and Liverpool today, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to touch on this yesterday, actually. Mauricio Pochettino said in his briefing earlier in the week, he said that Jurgen Klopp, he said there might be a tendency among referees to buy into the party atmosphere because it's Klopp's last few months as England manager. If that's not putting referees under pressure, I'm not really sure what is. But 3 o'clock this afternoon, Wembley, the first domestic trophy up for grabs of the season. Chelsea haven't won a domestic trophy for 6 years. Could it finally be an opportunity for the £1 billion they spent on players to finally come to the boil and earn some success for them?
That's a lot of money.
I know. And a word on Stanley Bowles as well. QPR forward, 75 years old, died last night, sadly, after a battle with Alzheimer's. 315 appearances for QPR, 97 goals. Brian Clough famously said about him, if he could pass a betting shop as well as he could pass a football, he'd be a multimillionaire.
Oh.
He played for so many.
He did, but
clubs.
QPR was the main one. He was a 70s entertainer. He had the hair, he had the arrogance, he had the lot. He was a fantastic player, he really was. And QPR had a benefit game about 6 years ago against Bournemouth to pay for his care home fees. And that got him over the line. Had massive affinity with Manchester as well. Although he played most of his career in London, he never really left his Manchester home. He's born in Collyhurst.
Oh, bless. 75, no age at all.
Indeed.
OK, Aidan, thanks very much indeed. Still to come, we're going to be looking at the newspapers for you with Susan Holder and Andy Williams.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Mike Freer joins me now. Mike, thank you very much for coming into the studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
Firstly, how are you?
It's been a busy day, and it's been quite a traumatic experience. It's a real wrench to walk away from a job that you love, but also a constituency that you've become. You know, I live there; it's my home, and I regard many of my constituents as friends, and it is an amazing place. And to walk away from that is really quite. It's quite an emotional wrench to think this was a job I loved, but unfortunately I can't do it anymore.
Can you talk me through the process? Because you mentioned about the alleged arson attack, etc., being the final straw, but this has been a really quite vile journey to get to this point. So what kind of threats have you had? What's that look like?
Well, like every MP, I mean, you day in, day out, you get abusive emails, you get low-level stuff that, whether we should accept it, but we do, it's graffiti, it's things like, in the past I've had a mock Molotov cocktail left on the office door, meaning we had to evacuate the whole building. I've come out of my house and found a note on my car. Where I live is common knowledge, but what I drive is less so. And it's a few weeks after John Mann had the wheel nuts on his car tampered with. So that all kind of makes you get a bit, what on earth's going on. But I've had 2 run-ins with the organisation that was Muslims Against Crusades, and people like Anjem Chowdhury, who was behind that organisation, been to prison. But online, it said, I used to do surgery in mosques, so I wanted to go out and see people. And online, there's a picture of me saying, you're not welcome in our mosque, let Stephen Timms be a pointed reminder. So it's not very subtle.
Well, just for our viewers and listeners who might not remember that,
Stephen Timms, of course, was stabbed by a woman who'd been radicalised. Thank heavens he survived. So it was a very unsubtle.
It's 6:42. Good morning to you. Let's have a look at some of the newspapers for you this morning.
Yes, and the Sunday Times reports that 3 female MPs have been provided with taxpayer-funded security due to rising safety concerns.
The Sunday Telegraph has MPs being safeguarded by private security because of fears of people who've been radicalised.
The Observer leads with Sir Keir Starmer's allegations of Rishi Sunak sheltering extremists.
The Sunday Mirror says MP Lee Anderson's potential resignation. Well, no, they're saying they should kick him out of the party full stop, aren't they? That's what they're saying this morning.
The Mail on Sunday leads with accusations of hypocrisy against Deputy Labour leader Angela Rayner over her £48,000 profit from an ex-council house sale.
All right, let's see what's making the news this morning with author and journalist Susan Holder and political commentator Andy Williams. Very, very good morning.
Good morning.
To you both.
Good morning.
Andy, let's start with the Observer, should we? Looking at Sir Keir Starmer accusing Rishi Sunak of harbouring extremists within his party. I mean, to me, this is taking it a little bit out of context, isn't it? Is he just trying to deflect from the fact that he still seems to have an anti-Semitic problem within his own party?
Well, I think that there is still, absolutely, within the Labour Party, a problem with anti-Semitism on the fringes. I think he's pointing out rightly that, similarly, the Conservative Party has become, or at least a fringe of the Conservative Party has become more extreme in the last few years. And these comments are representative of that. I think absolutely, it's completely right that they have suspended the whip, because the important thing is that language matters in politics. So Lee Anderson was trying to make a particular point. He did it in a very clumsy way, and in a way that, let's be honest, if he'd been talking about the Jewish community, there is no doubt that people will have said that these were anti-Semitic comments.
Yeah, I think that's probably a valid point.
It is a valid point, yeah. And you're right there, the language is very important, but everyone is kind of now ready to jump on anything that's said. And, I have to say, Lee Anderson must have known that. You can't now be walking about... We're all kind of second-thinking everything we're saying publicly, because you've got to be very careful. You don't want to be misread. And if he didn't want to be misread, he possibly should have spoken with a little bit more care.
Yeah. He did seem quite angry in the interview, didn't he? And I understand that. It's, we were talking about this the other day. It's an emotive issue.
Yeah.
But I think he let his frustration run away with him. And unfortunately, what he said was pretty unseemly.
Well, we didn't see an apology from Lee Anderson, but he did say that his words were clumsy, but they were born out of sheer frustration at what is happening to our beautiful capital city. So we didn't get an apology.
Yeah, and there's many things I could get upset with Sadiq Khan about what's been happening to London in particular. And anyone who's even visited will know that it's a lot more difficult to get around. There's a lot of problems there. There's a lot of things I'd go at him for. And what Lee Anderson chose to go at him for, to say he'd been taken over by a Muslim section, isn't really where I'd start.
Yeah. Well, no.
Giving his capital city away to his mates, that is pretty...
Yeah.
It's basically conspiracy-type language, isn't it? Let's be honest about it.
No.
OK.
Do you think the rhetoric needs to be dialed down on both sides, though? So anti-Semitic and Islamophobia? Because, looking at the front page of The Telegraph this morning, Susan...
Yeah.
we are seeing a real threat to MPs' safety, aren't we?
We are, and there is a huge interview with the Detective Chief and Superintendent Moira Lovegrove about all this. Obviously, we've had cases where David Amess MP, Joe Cox MP have been murdered, and any sort of threat or fear that MPs now have of speaking their minds is it's just out of control, that they can't feel that they can say what they want. And Lee Anderson, for all we might criticise him, it's a point of view. It's a point. If you don't agree with it, the whip's been revoked. If you don't agree with what people say, don't vote for them. Our power should be at the ballot box. We don't need to personally attack people. We don't need to have a situation where we feel that our MPs are in danger.
And I think that is Oh, you could be a journalist, Susan.
Could I?
What a great way of phrasing it. Our power should be at the ballot box. We don't need to personally attack MPs.
Well, we don't.
That's exactly right.
With that, we have that power. We don't need further power. I read the other day there are actually some of the. I think it was the Just Stop Oil protesters are talking about. Do you remember they went on some roofs of MPs' houses? They're talking about actually attacking MPs' houses as part of their game plan moving forward. I mean, it doesn't matter what subject it is. That is not acceptable. No. We cannot have people who are meant to represent us attacked and feeling in danger in that way. We are going to lose good people. With the kind of people who are going to want to take that job are not going to be perhaps the best people to have. They're going to be people who perhaps are of that mindset themselves. We don't want those people in charge. So there is a big interview in the Telegraph about this. And they are reviewing existing security measures. Tom Tugendhat, the security minister, has said they're reviewing existing security measures in the wake of all of this. But, I mean, how much can you do? It's a cultural problem. It's not something that can be fixed with money and bodyguards.
Oh, talking of money, should we talk about throwing money up north? 5 billion quid to improve transport links.
Well, it's a great idea, isn't it? I don't know why they didn't think of this before, apparently.
I think
they thought of it and they didn't do it. That's the problem, isn't it? They've been talking about this for years and not done anything.
In a brilliant move, Rishi Sunak has vowed to revitalise Britain's forgotten regions. Well, I don't know who forgot about it. I didn't forget about it. Did Rishi forget about it? By putting all the money from HS2 into the Red Wall areas. Well, that's not new, is it? That's not a new idea. If you've ever tried to go from Sheffield to Manchester, it's just impossible.
Well, part of the whole HS2 thing, we've done this anyway. Mind you, that seems
But it wasn't. It really wasn't. It was all being concentrated on this getting to Birmingham 10 minutes earlier nonsense.
Oh, no, but then if it was going to Manchester, then they were talking
that was
about...
the first bit they got rid of.
Manchester to Leeds and all the rest of it, weren't they?
Yeah.
So all that actually would have happened anyway.
It would have done, apart from the fact it wasn't going to happen because it was all getting so out of control, spending-wise, that those were the bits that went, and we were just keeping this, getting to Birmingham quicker and everything else. Anyway, they're now saying that more than £4.7 billion will be offered to councils across the North and Midlands for projects such as road improvements, new rail stations or better bus services. Well, get on with it then, because we need it desperately.
It is so desperately needed.
So desperate. I mean, the real story here is that our record on infrastructure in this country in the last 20 years, going back even further, I think, it's a scandal. We just can't get anything built. You know, HS2 was originally supposed to cost 32 billion. It's now going to cost 71 billion. 71 billion.
And that's just to get to Birmingham.
To take 10 minutes off the journey time to Birmingham. I mean, seriously.
I love Birmingham, but no one needs to get there 10 minutes earlier. and if you do, get the earlier train.
Yeah, but what do you then reckon of the fact that Andy Burnham, Andy Street, all the rest of it are saying, well, actually, we can get private funding to do this. It's going to be cheaper. We're going to build it anyway.
Well, I mean,
it's possible, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, surely it does. And I think harnessing the private sector investment's really important. But there was an election campaign that was fought on this idea of levelling up, on investing in the north, and it just hasn't happened. So if it is going to happen, delighted. Great to see that. But it just. Where's the action?
I mean, and at the risk of being very, very basic, can I just say the word potholes? Really, could we not just fix potholes? That would just getting around. But I drove the other day from Manchester through Cheshire, and I felt like I was some sort of slalom off-road drive. The amount of potholes I was weaving around and kind of going into the other lane just to it was absolutely ridiculous. It has got to a point now where the danger on the roads is so ridiculous, and that's where the money should be going.
But that's local councils.
It is local councils.
Why aren't they doing it?
Why aren't they doing it?
I hit a pothole last night. Awful bang. I was like, oh my goodness, I burst a tyre. I hadn't. Thank God.
Well, do your suspension any good?
They're everywhere. No, and it was dark, so you can't see them on the road.
No, you can't. And when it rains, they're full of water. Yeah. I mean, we could go on forever about potholes. But these are the sort of things that money needs to be spent on.
And it matters to people.
People really care about it, absolutely, because it causes problems in their daily lives.
It impacts everything, literally.
Well, Kingswood, wasn't it? Kingswood? The MP there, the new MP in Kingswood, was saying...
Wellingborough, I think.
Was it in Wellingborough? Was saying it was one on
potholes. Absolutely.
Right. I believe that.
So that's all she hears on the doorstep.
But that's also ridiculous in that she was going for a job that actually she can't influence what the council does about potholes. So, I mean, it's just like... I mean, that's totally crackers, isn't it? Something really does need to be done about that. Andy, Boris Johnson in the Mail on Sunday... an impassioned plea for more support, more supplies for Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, as Ellie was saying earlier, he has been steadfast in his support for Ukraine over the last few years. And I think it is really important that the international community keeps up, the pressure. I think Zelensky's done an incredible job, a kind of PR job, really, to keep applying that pressure to pour funding in, because that is what is going to keep Ukraine in the fight, really. And you know, my concern is that there are other people on the international stage who want to pull back and withdraw, and I think that'd be a disaster.
So we had a commentator on just a few days ago saying, "Oh, Zelensky's a crook." Now, I have to say I don't believe that. But the problem is that is a thought which is dissipating now.
Certainly in the United States it is. I mean, there's if you look at not just... We know that Donald Trump wants to pull out of Ukraine, but if you look at the polling in America, there's a huge number of people, a significant proportion, who think that America should just pull their funding, and they think faraway land, don't care, get on with it. And that's really worrying.
I think Boris Johnson has been very... his positivity on this is actually quite impressive. I don't get impressed by Boris very much, but his interview about the situation in Ukraine and the way he's across that, and just that positivity he has, actually, of really... He does seem to believe that Ukraine can do it. I do find that quite a positive thing that you can kind of get behind and believe in.
Yeah. And the Ukrainians are so grateful for him.
Yeah.
He's so adored in that country.
Let's change tack. Let's do a big U-turn, should we? Because I mentioned this at the top of the show. Ed Sheeran has apparently donated underpants and socks to a charity shop, and they've seen a huge... This is in the Sunday Mirror. Huge boost, I suppose. I just wonder...
Can I just clarify? Are these... Ed Sheeran worn by?
Yeah,
right?
It says old socks and pants.
You don't give underwear to charity, do you? I don't think that's a thing.
See, you have some pop music and rock music connections.
You want me to squirrel through my husband's underwear drawer and see whether I can...
Noddy holder pants.
Pair of noddy holder pants? Well, if anyone's interested, you can contact me. I can, we'd perhaps do a private arrangement if that's something you're particularly interested in.
Well, whatever.
We can negotiate a fee for worn socks of noddy. He has got some crazy socks, so maybe they would be interesting.
But he has been... I mean, there must be... The huge fans must sort of want any old...
Do you know what?
Bit of tat that
Funnily enough, I got a message yesterday to say that on eBay right now is a desk, like an old-school desk, that people are claiming on eBay. I think they're asking £350 or something. It's Noddy Holder's old school desk. And it has Noddy Holder sat here, written on it, not in Noddy's writing. Now... I've no idea. Noddy has no knowledge of that desk, but somebody is trying to make a buck. People do that all the time. We once had a house clearance and we had loads of stuff taken away, and 2 days later, half of it appeared all over eBay, and somebody paid thousands of pounds for it was rubbish. Just rubbish.
Oh, just chuck it all on eBay yourself next time.
I know, I never thought.
No, well, there you go. All right, Susan, Andy, thank you both very much indeed.
Very much
Good to see you. We've got lots more still to come, haven't we?
We certainly do, but first, let's take a look at the weather with Greg.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got some heavy rain across southern parts of England and Wales today, turning quite windy as well, but brighter for many of us. This morning, a mixed picture. We've got the heavy rain across parts of Devon, Cornwall, southwest Wales, slowly pushing its way eastwards through the day. Elsewhere, some mist and fog to start with, but this should lift and break. And then there'll be plenty of sunny spells, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. A few showers possible here and perhaps northern England later, but the winds will increase across southern coastal counties of England, perhaps Wales too. Gales for some. Outbreaks of heavy rain could lead to some localised flooding. Temperatures near average for the time of year, so in any sunshine, not feeling too bad further north. As we go through into the evening time, we'll see the heavy rain continue, perhaps transferring more into southeastern areas, with the rain becoming lighter across the southwest. Elsewhere, clear spells, temperatures dropping below freezing under the clearest skies in Scotland, holding up under the cloud and the strengthening wind further south and east. So a grey start to Monday here. Outbreaks of rain generally holding on across the far southeast, but eventually clearing later on in the day. Elsewhere, A bright day, mixture of sunny spells, scattered showers. Best of the sunshine across the north and the west of the UK. Quite a keen northeasterly breeze for parts of England, particularly near the coast, which will make it feel quite chilly for the time of year. Temperatures on face value generally near average for the time of year.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
We had Grant Shapps on last week. He was talking about how defence spending is now creeping up to 2.25% of GDP. Ben Wallace's predecessor suggested it should be 3%. We hear that we've got the smallest army, I think, since the Napoleonic Wars. Numbers are down. There's a question as to whether we can staff frigates in the Red Sea. Why haven't we sent aircraft carriers? What's your impression of the situation?
Well, I don't think it matters how much you spend, it's how effectively you spend it. And we spend it very ineffectively. We have lots of scandals about defence spending. And I think partly because of the monopoly position of some of our defence suppliers, we don't get good value and we don't get reliability. This latest story in the Telegraph is that HMS Diamond, which is our ship, which is out there defending the Red Sea, doesn't have the capability of firing a missile from the ship to the land, so it can't participate in the attacks on the Houthis. So in order that we can participate in the attacks, we're flying RAF aircraft from Cyprus, which is a very long way away. When I was Defence Secretary, I ordered cruise missiles for our nuclear-powered, but not nuclear-armed submarines. And I think we have 6 or possibly 7 of those. But last autumn, it was reported that 5 of those were out of commission, were not available. We have about 21 aggressive surface ships. So we've got 2 aircraft carriers, and we've got frigates, and we've got destroyers. But at any one time, you can count on about half of those not being available because they're under refit or whatever. So we have a minimal surface fleet now. And for whatever reason, it doesn't seem that we're able to deploy a submarine to the area that can fire cruise missiles. Our 2 aircraft carriers, built at enormous expense, are sitting in Portsmouth.
Which seems to most people ludicrous,
well,
at least with what's going on.
It doesn't seem ludicrous to me.
Very good morning to you. This is Breakfast on GB News. It is 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 25th of February. Today, Lee Anderson is suspended from the Conservative Party as Tories come to grips with Islamophobia claims.
Private security has been deployed for MPs as police warn of a radicalising moment.
2 years on from Russia's invasion, Boris Johnson has been to the front line, reaffirming support for Ukraine.
In spite of everything, those gallant, heroic Ukrainians are fighting on, and I've got absolutely no doubt that they are going to win.
Trump defeats Nikki Haley in her home state of South Carolina, putting him a step closer to a 2020 rematch.
I was just informed that we got double the number of votes that has ever been received in the great state of South Carolina.
Now, if you're heading down to your local for a Sunday roast today, spare a thought for pubs which might be, one of the hundreds across the UK which is now under threat.
Good morning. There was misery for Manchester United as they slipped to defeat against Fulham at Old Trafford, although the manager, Erik ten Hag, insisted his side showed great character and personality. Is this a man in denial? We'll find out later.
Oh, good morning. We've got some mist and fog patches, quite chilly first thing, but heavy rain already across the southwest. Find out all the details for the day ahead coming up in the programme.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Do you know what I hate?
What do you hate?
It's tabloid press.
Oh, yeah.
I have to say, which does it, and it's the way. It's why if I won the lottery, I'd be like no publicity.
Oh, I wouldn't go public with it, would you?
Oh God, no.
No.
Begging letters and all the rest of it, they sort of talk about, don't they? But this, the big lottery winners, right? They won 61 million quid. Thought they'd won £2.60. Turns out it was 61 million
Good
quid.
surprise.
There's a big piece on some of the papers this morning. Feud with brother. Pair haven't spoken since Furious Row and all this. Suddenly, you become public property, don't you? And they're delving out all this dirty laundry. Can't we leave them to it? They're just ordinary people who happen to have won a lot of money. Leave them alone.
It's very difficult to control, though, isn't it? Once you go public and you open up your lives, you're open to anything.
Of course,
according to the tabloids.
The lottery companies want you to go public because
Why?
it's good PR for them.
Good PR.
Look what you could have. Look what these ordinary people have done. It could happen to you. It's all that sort of thing, isn't it?
Well, I was reading, apparently you get the reason why you go public is you get access to certain types of support.
Yeah, is that what it is?
That's why some people decide to go public.
Yeah, but if you won 61 million quid, you can buy that support elsewhere.
That's true.
You do need support. I think you probably need psychiatrists as well as financial advisors if you win that sort of money.
Well, you'd be giddy, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You wouldn't know what to do with yourself.
No, so you do need support, but buy your own.
61 million. I'm not over it.
I'm not over it either.
If it was 6.1, I think I'd be chuffed.
Well, that'd do you.
I'd be chuffed with £500,000 at this point. 61 million is wonderful.
Stuff of dreams.
It really is. Almost too much, I'd say.
No. Never too much. Never be too rich or too thin. Who said that? It was some Hollywood great, I think, said that.
Problematic, isn't it?
It is slightly problematic in today's world, but I'll go with the can't be too rich thing. Yes. Now, former Conservative Deputy Chairman Lee Anderson has been suspended from the party after refusing to apologise for comments aimed at the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan.
Well, he said that the London Mayor had given the capital away and was controlled by Islamists. Sadiq Khan had this to say yesterday.
Look, these comments from a senior Conservative are Islamophobic, are anti-Muslim and are racist.
Well, soon afterwards, Mr Anderson was dropped and he issued this statement saying, "I fully accept they had no option but to suspend the whip in these circumstances. However, I'll continue to support the government's efforts to call out extremism in all its forms, be that anti-Semitism or Islamophobia."
Well, it comes today as the Sunday Telegraph and the Sunday Times report that some MPs are being given extra security due to the rising extremism threat.
Well, earlier we spoke to political commentator Jack Rowlett.
Appalling that we've got to the point where senior Conservative figures feel it's OK to say these things. So much of politics is it's kind of grey areas, and actually you need debate, and you don't want people to be shut down for things they say in the vast majority of cases. But actually, this is a binary. Someone is either on the side of Islamists, giving London away to Islamists, or they're not. And in this case, they're not. It's a conspiracy theory. And it's not as if they're short of legitimate reasons to attack Sadiq Khan. He's totally failed on crime, totally failed on housing, totally failed on transport. And by resorting to these sorts of prejudiced conspiratorial attacks, Lee Anderson is taking the debate away from scrutinising and raising the legitimate failures of Sadiq Khan as Mayor of London and moving it back on to Tory infighting. And we know that actually voters hate this infighting. And whenever the attention is drawn back on to the divisions within the Conservative Party, their poll rating falls, support for them falls, and it makes it harder for the Conservatives to push through with their agenda. And it really does make you wonder. You know, we hear a lot of criticism, some of it very valid, I think, that we have a Conservative government, but we don't have Conservative policies being pushed through. You know, the tax rate is extremely high at the moment, for example. And there are lots of different groups that are blamed for this. Actually, it does make you wonder if really it's just the low quality of individual that is at the forefront of the Conservative Party right now. And the British right really needs a rethink.
Now, 6 minutes past 7, the Met Office has issued a yellow weather warning for rain. Not what you want to hear on a Sunday morning.
Nope.
Heavy downpours could bring flooding and disruption to parts of England over the next 2 days.
Oh, well, the warning, which covers parts of south-east England, said that up to 40 millimetres of rain could fall. It's in place from 3 o'clock today until 9 a.m. on Monday.
Oh, well, weather journalist Nathan Rao is here with us for more on this. Nathan, do you ever have any good news for us?
Well, it depends where you are today, because if you're in the south, then no, I have no good news for you, because they are going to get some heavy rain, as you just mentioned. The Met Office has issued 2 weather warnings, one in the southwest, that's covering Somerset, Cornwall, Devon, the West Country, that sort of area, and the east of the country, the west is going to get it first. So the weather warning for the southwest covers pretty much through today, and then from this evening until tomorrow morning, the southeast, which is London, Kent, Sussex, Essex, that's already some very, very heavy downpours. Up to 1.5 inches in parts, which doesn't sound a lot, but you've got to remember that they've had a lot of rain over the past few months, and so the ground is saturated. So we're looking at groundwater flooding in those areas, and that is why the Met Office warnings are in place. There are also some Environment Agency warnings and alerts in place, so if you're in the south today and tomorrow, and pretty much for the rest of the week, you're going to get wet.
Oh,
pack your
dear.
brollies.
Can I ask you about the mist this morning, the fog?
Yes.
Because that, frankly, I don't know if that's a sort of something that is happening as a result of this wet weather coming in. I don't know. But it was so bad.
Yes. Now, I have 2 things to tell you about fog. One of them is very, very interesting. The fog is it's called radiation fog. So when you get a warm... It's not quite as scary as it sounds. Heat radiates from the ground, and when the ground radiates heat and gets very, very cold very quickly, the air that's just above it, which contains moisture, also turns cold, and the water within that condenses into mist and fog, and that's really why you get fog. But there's an interesting thing that you can do with fog and mist, and you can try this at home. If you're in a hilly area, this works best. If you take your camera and you have the sun behind you and you take a picture into the fog, don't be surprised if when you look back you see a picture of a big looming ghostly figure back at you. What that is, it's called a broken spectre. I can see your face, you're looking intrigued.
I am intrigued.
The sun casts your shadow into the mist, and because the mist is made up of millions and millions of little water droplets, they act as magnifying glasses and blow up your shadow. So when you look at your picture back, it looks like a big ghostly figure looming back at you.
Oh,
Scary stuff.
I'm looking online.
Yeah, it's called a broken spectre, and that ring around the top is called a glory.
It looks very ethereal.
Yeah.
It does. Well, that's quite exciting, actually.
Yes,
There's something to do.
If you get some mist and you're actually in the right place, try that. The sun behind you, take a picture into the mist, and you might see a broken spectre.
Well, that's your
exciting.
Sunday fun.
Otherwise, you're going to get the rain.
Yeah, is it good? All the fog and stuff, when's that going to burn off?
Well, the fog's going to be when the cold weather is with us. You're going to get a risk of fog. We're actually getting warmer. The temperatures are recovering to average throughout the middle of the week. So that thick fog that you get in winter when it gets very, very cold very quickly. Shouldn't be too much of a problem about that. But yeah.
So people have to be really careful out there, don't they? So we've got the heavy rain, wind, and fog.
That's right. The rain is going to be the main priority. The rain is what the Met Office have issued the warnings for today. There is going to be some wind, some gale force winds along the coast, but it's really the rain. Because we've had so much rain over the past few months with 10 named storms, we've been talking about storms for months, the groundwater is saturated. In fact, there's been about twice the average amount of rain in some parts of the country, and they're still getting more.
You know what that means?
Flooding.
Means we'll have a drought in the summer.
Yeah.
And
Hosepipe ban.
Honestly, it seems that it's always the way, isn't it? I mean, what's that all about? When is spring coming, Nathan?
I think it is 5 days until the start of the meteorological spring, which is the 1st of March. I know, I can't wait. If you're waiting for the astronomical spring, you have to wait till the 21st. There's 2 different sorts of spring. I always go for the 1st of March because I like it when spring arrives. So 1st of March is when spring arrives. And there are some signs actually through spring. One weather forecasting company, Atmospheric G2, are talking about slightly above average temperatures through to July. So that could make for a warmer type of
that would be lovely.
Hints of, suggestions of. It's a trend sort of estimation, so no promises, but could get a warm summer. I know.
No promises. Never any promises.
Not from me.
No, lovely, Nathan. Thank you very much.
All right.
I'll tell you why I'm so obsessed with the fog this morning.
Why are you obsessed with the fog?
Is because last night we started watching the TV version of the Stephen King book, The Mist. And then when I got in the car this morning, it was
following
like...
you.
Oh, hell.
I have to say, The Mist, the film The Mist, is brilliant. If you like horror films, The Mist, brilliant.
There you go. You've got 2 things to do today. You need to find yourself a hill.
And some sun.
And some sun.
And
then you've got a film to watch.
Yeah.
There you
go. You know, the TV show is not... I don't think it's quite as good as the film, but nevertheless gave me a bit of a shiver this morning.
Oh, well. At 11 minutes past 7, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom.
Well, the UK has launched a new wave of attacks against Houthi rebels in Yemen. The Defence Secretary confirmed RAF Typhoons joined US allies in attacking various missile and drone launching sites. It's the fourth set of attacks the UK has taken part in response to Houthi attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden.
The body of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been handed over to his mother. He unexpectedly died in prison 10 days ago. His death certificate suggested it was of natural causes. His spokeswoman says it's still not clear whether authorities will allow relatives to hold a funeral the way his family wants and the way he deserves.
And Donald Trump has defeated Nikki Haley in the South Carolina Republican primary overnight. He's now the firm favourite to claim the Republican nomination.
But now there's a spirit that I have never seen. We ran two great races, but there's never been a spirit like this. And I just want to say that I have never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now.
But Nikki Haley is not going anywhere yet as she continues her campaign for the nomination.
I'm a woman of my word. This has never been about me or my political future. We need to beat Joe Biden in November. I don't believe Donald Trump can beat Joe Biden.
Now, for those who work from home, maybe you can relate to this. I know I definitely can from lockdown. Apparently, if you work from home, half of people who work from home gain weight.
Ah.
Yes, if you are working from home, half of people who do so gain weight. You are more prone to snacking, drinking and smoking, apparently. And I can relate
And
to
exercising less.
Exercising
Imagine, you
less.
don't exercise a lot when you're at work in the office if you've got that sort of job, do you?
Apparently, you get out of bed too late, you don't get up from your desk and you snack too much because the fridge is right there.
Ah. So what are you meant to do?
Well, do the opposite. You have to get up early, move from your desk and don't snack.
Yeah, but this isn't right nonsense. If you'll be like me. Someone say the pitfall is eating a mid-morning snack. The solution, do an exercise snack instead. Get up and do some yoga for 5 minutes. What a load of nonsense. What absolute tripe. Who's going to do that? I'm just going to have an exercise snack.
No.
Get a grip. I'm going to have a Mars bar.
You just need it, well, yes, or just have a little healthy snack. But I was doing that in lockdown. You just eat all the time, eat with boredom. I can see how it happens.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's just the solutions. What absolute piffle. What paper is it in?
It's in the Sunday Telegraph.
Well, they should have more sense.
There you go.
People think I'm going to get up and do an exercise.
No. You wouldn't catch me doing that either.
Good grief. They're not the sort of people who are lying in and eating snacks anyway, those people. Oh, just pop on my yoga pants. Do that. Well, look, tripe. Honest to goodness.
Well, having said that, I've actually just bought a yoga mat. You know it's my newfound love. Yeah.
But Pilates was your newfound love.
No, it is, but you can't do that at home.
Can't
well, you
you?
can, but you need a mat. So I bought the mat.
So you bought a yoga mat to do Pilates on?
Yeah, I have. I'll let you know how it goes. I haven't actually unwrapped it yet. It's just sitting in the hall.
Is it ever going to get unwrapped?
I don't know. I'm not the kind of person to do a workout in the middle of the day at home.
This is what she's like.
But anyway, I've got good intentions.
Have you got yoga leggings?
I do. I bought a whole new wardrobe on TikTok shop, would you believe?
Oh.
Very modern.
But then you're eating a load of bad stuff. She made banana bread the other day.
Yeah, and can you tell them what I did?
They brought it in for me yesterday. Yeah. Actually, masses of it. Did you actually eat any of it?
No, I had a slice and I thought Stephen can have the rest. Because you guilt-tripped me. See, I made a mini egg cheesecake. When was it? Last week?
Yeah.
And you didn't get a slice of that, and you reminded me live on air. I felt bad. So then I went
Did you just
home.
have the one slice? Because it was two. We got the two ends pushed together. You literally have a slice out the middle.
I literally had a slice out the middle and then gave you the rest. Yeah.
Oh.
But you had it with custard.
Oh, custard, yeah, we
And
like custard.
What was your review?
It was, as I said to you in the text last night, stunning. Was very nice. So pleased. It was really, really good. You are a good baker.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else you'd like to say?
Well, you look all right. All right, let's see what the weather's going to do. Here's Greg.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got some heavy rain across southern parts of England and Wales today, turning quite windy as well, but brighter for many of us. This morning, a mixed picture. We've got the heavy rain across parts of Devon, Cornwall, southwest Wales, slowly pushing its way eastwards through the day. Elsewhere, some mist and fog to start with, but this should lift and break, and then there'll be plenty of sunny spells, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. A few showers possible here and perhaps northern England later, but the winds will increase across southern coastal counties of England, perhaps Wales too. Gales for some. Outbreaks of heavy rain could lead to some localised flooding. Temperatures near average for the time of year, so in any sunshine, not feeling too bad further north. As we go through into the evening time, we'll see the heavy rain continue, perhaps transferring more into southeastern areas, with the rain becoming lighter across the southwest. Elsewhere, clear spells, temperatures dropping below freezing under the clearest skies in Scotland, holding up under the cloud and the strengthening wind further south and east. So a grey start to Monday here. Outbreaks of rain generally holding on across the far southeast, but eventually clearing later on in the day. Elsewhere, a bright day, mixture of sunny spells, scattered showers. Best of the sunshine across the north and the west of the UK. Quite a keen northeasterly breeze for parts of England, particularly near the coast, which will make it feel quite chilly for the time of year. Temperatures on face value generally near average for the time of year.
I think I need to take you to the pub to...
I think you do.
I think you do. She was out last night, but she was sober.
Thank you. I was driving. On my tap water.
You're on tap water, so you make up for it today by going down the boozer, going down your local.
Supporting my local,
Well,
yes.
we need to, because apparently 29 pubs are closing every single week. So is your local at risk? We're going to be talking about that in just a moment.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Chris, what is the preferred way in which the police go about their business at the moment? There's these two strands of thinking: evidence-based policing versus bobbies on the beat.
It's very, very difficult. The problem that police have got, basically, is that they're too thinly spread, and it's too much is expected of them. There's a long list, isn't it? Every month we hear police need to do more about this, police need to do more about that, and police do their best. They're overwhelmed with bureaucracy. I mean, when I was a young PC, if I took a shoplifter in, then I'd be in and out within an hour. You take a shoplifter in now, and you're doomed for the rest of your shift for 6 or 7 hours dealing with the bureaucracy. Police want to get back in those communities because community policing is really the core of policing. But such are the demands on their time at the moment, and the bureaucracy, and the fact that they are struggling now to retain experienced officers. People are hemorrhaging out of the police, and new recruits coming in haven't got that experience, and there's a good chance they may not stay anyway. So there's all sorts of problems. And for the Home Secretary to glibly say he wants more done, frankly, clearly shows he's got no understanding of the pressure police are under, and of course the constant criticism that they face across the board. Very rarely do you actually hear of police officers getting praised for acts of bravery or acts of compassion. So there's a problem with morale in the police force, and clearly a problem with the Home Secretary, who needs to get out there and talk to officers on the front line who frankly are struggling. And last night, of course, was a graphic example.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:21. Should we have a look at the sport this morning? Aidan McGee's poised. He's ready to go, ladies and gentlemen. He is.
Unlike Man United.
Well, no, but it's interesting. Eric Ten Hag thinks it's all going very well.
Do you remember Comical Ali from the
Yes, I do,
2003 Iraqi
War,
incursion? Yeah, exactly. And, you know, they say denial isn't a river in Egypt. Now, I can only assume that because he's had so many run-ins with players over the last couple of years that maybe he's been told to kind of temper his criticism when things don't go badly. And I suppose at the end of the day, when the team loses, the buck stops with the manager. Anyway, they lose at home to Fulham for the first time since 2003 yesterday. Fulham had not won an away match since the opening day of the season. They were comprehensively the better side, Fulham, yesterday. And yet, Eric Ten Hag comes out and says, after a 10th Premier League defeat this season, he said, I thought it was a reasonable performance. You have to look at the bigger picture. I thought the players showed personality and character. Now,
well, that's good.
You're no football expert, right? But can you ever remember Sir Alex Ferguson saying anything like that after a defeat?
You can let get away with that.
How rude. How rude.
I do apologise, no, I'm underestimating your knowledge. Sorry. No, Alex Ferguson, look, they suffered bad days at Man United. Of course they do, but he never came out and said the players were great. No. He didn't over-egg his criticism all the time, but he was measured, he was balanced.
You've got to be realistic.
You completely have, and fans see through that in the social media era when every scrap of every press conference is analysed to the nth degree. You can't. There's no getting through that. There's no pulling the wool over the supporters' eyes anymore. And I look at Marcus Rashford yesterday, looking disinterested, a lack of effort. That's somebody who needs a move, I would say. Bruno Fernandes, the captain, throwing his arms up in the air. I mean, Roy Keane used to lose his temper now and again. I don't recall him throwing his arms up in the air. He usually worked to try and remedy the situation. Christian Eriksen coming on yesterday, trying to put some legs into the United side. He looked laboured. He looked cumbersome. He looked as if he couldn't possibly affect the outcome of the match. And as I say, Fulham, their manager Marco Silva said afterwards, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but we were the better side today and the better side won, and I couldn't have agreed more with him.
I should talk about Arsenal. A dominant display.
Absolutely. Well, I'm having to get an abacus now to add up all the goals that they've scored. Maths was never my strong point, but 5-2, 3, 6, 5 and 4, 25 goals in 6 games since the start of the year. They are indeed. And around Christmas time when they lost to Fulham and they lost to West Ham, we were saying, is that the end for them? Is this the moment where they crumble? They crumbled in, March, April last year. We were thinking they've done it around Christmas time, but goodness me, I think they could go anywhere now and win quite well. Manchester City put the pressure on them at 5:30 because they won at Bournemouth.
Yeah, so are they just a point behind Liverpool now?
Yeah, they are. Let me see. I've got a table in front of me. They are... Man City are a point behind Liverpool, yeah, you're quite right. I underestimated your football knowledge.
Yeah, look, he's proven him.
He hasn't even got a table in front of him, I don't think. It's incredible. Arsenal 2 points behind. Villa had a good win yesterday, beating Nottingham Forest 4-2. They're down in 4th, but an excellent season for them so far. But look, we've said a few times in the last few weeks, as a neutral, you want a title race, don't you? It looks like we've got a 3-way fight now between Liverpool, Manchester City and Arsenal. Liverpool in action in the Carabao Cup later on, as we touched on last hour. City looking efficient. They're not hitting a stride just yet. They've got 1 or 2 injuries still. But Arsenal, for me, as long as they haven't peaked too early, which can happen, as we know, I think they look good for the moment. And it would be a first Premier League title for them if they were able to do it since 2004.
Heck, 20 years.
I know. The Invincibles. Do you remember the Invincibles? They didn't lose a game, and then Arsene Wenger broke the whole thing up. If you'd said to me in 2004 Arsenal would still be searching for a first league title in 20 years, come 2024, I'd have said you're absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. What's going on in the cricket? Because England began in a fairly strong position, didn't they?
Yeah, look, they're doing OK. I mean, I've got up to the moment updates for you here. They're currently 57 for 2. There's... That's an ex-girlfriend, I think. No, of course not. Somebody told me I'm doing a great job doing the sport. So 57 for 2, that's not bad. That's the second innings for England. They managed to skittle India out for 307 earlier on today. So it's a tricky pitch, it's unpredictable, but England more than holding their own. If they can square the series, that gives them every hope to go and win it, and that'd be a fantastic win, because I still believe that possibly with the exception of Australia, India, in Test cricket terms, is the toughest place to go in the world.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, your optimism...
Yeah, I know.
I
believe in Bazball just a bit more than you do.
Bazball, they're still playing it. But when they picked up some ground yesterday... Yeah,
it wasn't...
it wasn't Bazball.
It wasn't really, no. It was a little bit more conservative. It was a little bit more conservative, and I think that's how you do it. Bazball's good. It's nothing wrong with playing expansive, aggressive cricket, but there's sometimes you just have to temper your emotions, and just... especially when you're on a tough pitch like that and a tough assignment like India.
Sometimes slowly wins the race.
Exactly.
Ebb and flow.
Ebb and flow, yeah. Picks up the football lingo as well, doesn't she?
She does, yeah. Well, she was talking about cricket, to be fair.
Oh,
so,
yeah,
I mean,
true,
you know,
yeah.
she's not always...
That was cricket.
It was
Aidan.
cricket, to be
It does
fair.
ebb and flow, though. You're right, it does. Just when you think you're on top, suddenly you're underneath.
Exactly, that's the game, yeah.
Well, that's often the way. Lovely. Aidan, thank you very much indeed.
Yep. See you soon.
Now, do stay with us. Still to come, is your local pub under threat? Apparently, I think it's been like 29 pubs.
29 this year.
Is it each year?
Oh, Lord,
Or each week? It's a lot anyway. Hundreds of pubs are closing. So we're going to be talking about that next.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yeah.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially, just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, you know, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offender behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, you know, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just been talking about food.
Obviously.
She's invited herself up to mine to go out for an Indian.
I said I'd really like to share a naan with you.
Yeah, I don't
That's
know why.
what I said, don't know.
I don't often share a naan, I'll tell you that.
You're not?
It's
Oh,
favourite
well,
bit.
I couldn't eat a whole one, so...
You couldn't eat a whole one?
No, like that with the pancake scenario the other day.
Oh, yeah.
I had to eat half my pancakes. I was defeated by them.
She was defeated by them.
But anyway, Birmingham, Balti Bazaar is the best.
It's the best. You said it's the
curry
best
I've ever
restaurant
had.
in the country.
I think so. Best restaurant in the United Kingdom. Best curry ever. In Sturchley, I believe. If you're in Sturchley, Balti Bazaar, get yourself there.
I love a Balti. Do you like a Balti? When I was younger, I used to be in Birmingham quite a lot.
Did you?
Baltis in Birmingham.
Best curries.
Massive table naans about that big.
Table naan.
Like, you'd have to share one of them.
I'd have to share one of those, yeah. I hadn't even heard of a table naan until about 2 seconds ago, and I want one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was nice. You had to take your own wine because you didn't have a liquor licence.
Yeah, that's
That
the same
sort
as
of
Balti Bazaar.
Yeah, perfect. Love it.
Best spot, isn't it? Talking about wine, Let's talk about pubs, shall we? Because
Oh,
there's a crisis in UK pubs. It's been laid bare as old watering holes are turned into supermarkets, DIY stores and takeaway shops. Probably like Bolton Bazaar.
Well, according to the campaign for Real Ale, CAMRA, 29 pubs close every week. Now, they're putting that down to energy costs and, of course, us having less cash to spend.
Well, head brewer and owner of Wildcraft Brewing, Mike Deal, joins us now. Very good to see you this morning, Mike. And what do you make of this, then? 29 pubs closing every single week. I mean, it's shocking statistics, isn't it?
It is shocking, but it's not that shocking when you see what's happening with the economy at the moment. We've all got less money to spend, and the first things that we stop doing are the things which aren't necessary. And unfortunately, that comes down to pubs in the end. They're not the most necessity thing that we've got. However, I think you've got it on your screen right now. We're calling them boozers, and actually, they're more than just boozers. They're more than just a place to go to have a drink and get drunk. They are a place of community, and they're community-led. And the best pubs that we've got are those ones where the landlords are there to promote that and to promote, people coming together. So it's a bit of a travesty that so many are closing.
Where does that leave companies like yours on? I don't know if you have a sort of establishment yourself or if you're literally in the supply business to all of this. But, of course, if pubs are closing, it's going to have a big knock-on effect on how much of your pop you can sell.
That's right. And that's why I've joined the campaign for pubs. I am the brewery representative for that, because as a supplier, I've seen the wholesale sales reducing for us because so many of the pubs are going under or struggling. And when you're struggling, you're going to go for the cheapest beer you can get. We're a small independent brewery, and we can't pass on the economies of scale that the bigger brewers have.
Are our drinking habits changing as well? Are people staying at home to drink more? Are they buying their alcohol from supermarkets? And we've also got that horrible phrase of sober curiosity and people not wanting to drink. Is that part of this decline, do you think?
It is a massive part of it, and we really saw that coming through COVID, where we all got into a habit of drinking at home, not being able to see each other, and doing what we're doing right now, talking over Zoom and things like that. It goes back to what I first said, that we've lost that community spirit that we used to have. Not everywhere. I've seen some great pubs out there at the moment where people come together all the time. I don't have a place, I've got a tap room now at the brewery, and we see it there. We've not got much space, and we don't have lots of small tables. We have some big areas for people to gather together. And it's great seeing people who don't even know each other coming together, sitting together, and joining with a drink, but actually meeting new friends. The problem we've got is that there's a lot of people who aren't doing that now, either because they've got out of the habit of going out or because they can't afford to.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the habit. It's a shame, though, isn't it? Because the way pubs, the ones that are survive, is often to, become bigger restaurants or to this. We're talking about families in pubs yesterday. I mean, be sort of more of a family pub, and actually you lose some of the atmosphere with that of the traditional local, don't you? Where actually it's where adults go and have adult conversations and adult drinks, and it would be a shame to lose all of that for the sort of plastic pubs that you see everywhere.
Yeah, it's a place to put the world to rights, and people have done that for years. The plastic pubs, as you're calling them, are often owned by the larger pub cos and the larger breweries, and unfortunately, they are the ones that have the money and have the ear of the government as well, and are able to push for the reforms that they want and get better. Get more money off for themselves, where the independents struggle because they don't have a voice. And that's part of why I've joined the campaign for pubs, to try and get the smaller pub that voice back in front of the government.
Yeah, well, let's hope it works. Mike, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
If you've got a local that you support, we'd love to hear from you this morning. There's a little brewery not far from us, actually, that's got a tap room.
Oh.
And they serve pizza.
Oh.
They do fresh pizza in there, and they often have
Maybe
like
we
a...
could add that into my trip.
I could do. And they often have like a little sort of jazz singer on, or...
Oh.
It's only small, it's very small, but... And of course, it's not that cheap. Beer is sort of quite expensive, I think.
Well, this is what I was going to say.
But it's a really nice little night out.
Yeah. Well, this is it. This is what I was going to say to Mike, actually, that a lot of pubs and bars and things like that now have to diversify, don't they? They have to add something else to their offering, really, to get people through the door. My local has tea and cake now, mornings, on like a Tuesday and a Thursday, to bring in lots of
Sort of older crowd.
Yeah.
Ladies
older
want lunch and all that.
That like to lunch, yeah. So trying to bring in, different sorts of people and quiz nights, all that sort of thing.
Oh, well, I like a quiz night.
Yeah, I love a quiz night. Well, in our job, it's quite handy because you know lots of little things.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're covering a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none when it comes to knowledge.
Oh, you know everything?
No.
He doesn't need anything, doesn't have any notes in front of him. It's all there in his mind.
I do. I've got I just do a lot of homework the night before.
Do you actually? That would actually make a lot of sense if you did. He doesn't. That's the annoying thing. He actually doesn't.
I do. And so does Susan Holder and Andy Williams. They're busy making notes right now, and then in a couple of minutes they'll join us to go through the papers.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
We have let Islamist extremism into Britain, we've let it fester, and now we've let it win. Our absolutely spineless surrender merchant political top brass are rolling over while government ministers wear stab vests and quit their jobs in fear. Veteran Tory Minister Mike Freer has had death threats from Islamists as well as an alleged arson attack on his office. The motive there has still not been established. He's standing down because he doesn't want to die. I cannot emphasise how important this is. A minister of the government is quitting his job because he doesn't want to be killed by a lunatic jihadi. And our Prime Minister has said absolutely nothing. Nothing. A spokesman for Rishi Sunak said he was saddened. Is that it? Our Prime Minister should have been out on the steps of Downing Street saying that we will not be intimidated. We will not let this continue. Enough is enough. What does he do instead? He tweets about XL bullies. Yeah, fantastic. Where's Keir Starmer on this? Well, he's conducting focus groups on how to get the Muslim vote back, so he's hardly going to come out all guns blazing, is he? Ed Davey? Well, there's no way a Liberal Democrat leader would come out and admit that his ideology has helped turn Britain into a poster nation for multicultural failure. The police have let protesters, which include rabid anti-Semites, rampage around London every flipping Saturday for the last 3 months, and today they are finally saying that they don't support some of the protests, which in the past have included a now banned terror group and people holding up anti-Jewish signs. They're saying, please don't march down Whitehall. All right, but will you do anything to stop them if they ignore you? I doubt it. I honestly cannot believe that we have sunk to the level where a serving minister stands down because of threats from extremists and our Prime Minister just doesn't feel the need to address it.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're enjoying your emails this morning. They're very cute.
Yeah, Karen says, just love the continued colour coordination. A bit of sunshine from the pair on this gloomy day. But what impresses me, Karen, is you said first red, then pink, now yellow. So you really have been watching every day. It's true. She rings me the night before and says, It's yellow tomorrow, doll.
No, do you know what I actually did this week? I was very organised. I gave you the 3 colours.
Yeah.
And I said, Friday we're going to wear pink, then you're going to wear red, and then we're going to wear yellow. And the cutest part is this one new as well?
No, this isn't new.
But you've been buying ties to match.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very sweet. Sue says, we're making her smile this morning. She loves the pair of us together. Tony says he's salivating thinking about the banana bread with custard. Well done, S&E.
Very, very good. And Teresa said it was the Duchess of Windsor who said you could never be too rich or too thin. There you go. I knew it was somebody famous.
Yeah, somebody. And on pubs, Nicholas says we need to protect our pubs by giving them a heritage grant. They are the heritage of British people and we need to stop them closing.
That's
Not a bad idea,
thought.
actually.
Mind you, trying to get money out of anywhere at the minute is problematic. All right, let's see what's in the papers with the author and journalist Susan Holder and political commentator Andy Williams. Morning, morning, morning.
Morning.
So about the race to the White House, should we, Andy?
Yeah, so if there was any doubt that Donald Trump was going to be the Republican nominee, there is no doubt anymore. He's absolutely thrashed Nikki Haley overnight in her home state of South Carolina, beating her by 20 points. And, yeah, he's going to be
He did say
the
that
nominee.
the party's never been more united, but she still got 40% of the vote.
In her home state.
Yeah, but it's, significant.
What I would say is that, I don't agree with the fact that the party is united. The party is divided, deeply divided between Trump supporters and never Trumpers. And that's why Nikki Haley's remained in the race, because she doesn't want to go down without a fight. She says Trump is too old, mentally unfit for office, unhinged, and doesn't believe that Donald Trump can beat Joe Biden.
So she's not staying to be his running mate?
I don't think so.
No, not have her. Mind, she was a big fan at one stage, wasn't she?
Yeah, well, you'd think...
Cozied up with him.
Yeah. Well, you can never say never. You say, well, she wouldn't be his running mate, but you can't predict what would happen in politics anymore, can you? And if you kind of come up with the most ludicrous outcome you could possibly think of, that would be the one. That would be the one. I mean, the fact that Trump even exists, is it my imagination, or is he just like a Simpsons character come to life? I can't get to grips with the fact that this man could, once again be the most important person in the Western world.
Well, and not only could, but it is probably more likely than not to be, really. I mean, I think he's now he's the bookies' favourite. He's the favourite in terms of looking at what American people think about Joe Biden and everything to do with his age. So, yeah, Trump absolutely
Is there ever
in the
any
box.
mileage in even thinking that Michelle Obama might put a hat in the ring one day?
Well,
Would we
that's a nice
dream?
romantic idea.
Is it? Am I just being romantic on that? Is that what it is?
She always
Meghan
said...
Markle one day?
Well...
Well, that's a bit more realistic, but I wouldn't say I was quite as romantic about that.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I find American politics is very odd. It's just the fact we've gone from thinking George W. was quite extreme to now thinking he was very, very middle of the road.
Oh, yeah, everyone thinks he's a lovely cuddly character now, he paints and isn't he funny? And, yeah, it does show how far we've come in less than 20 years.
Yeah.
So much.
Anyway, I know a lot of you like Trump and want him to win, because we always get lots and lots of emails, but it's just the fact that it would never happen here. We were mourning about chaos in the Commons the other day because some rules were altered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different...
It makes us look very sensible.
Does a bit.
Really. Susan, should we look at something totally different?
Go on.
Easter eggs.
Easter eggs. You want to look at Easter eggs? Well, yes, this was an interesting one. So when you made your cheesecake with mini eggs, presumably you paid for your mini eggs.
Yes, and they're very expensive.
So they are very expensive, and Easter eggs are so expensive that the shops are now putting anti-theft tags on Easter eggs in an attempt to deter thieves, because people are going in and trying to whip away your £3 dairy milk or your £5 for Reese's peanut butter eggs. Anyway, they are very overpriced, though, aren't they, Easter eggs? And they always are.
There's nothing in them.
There's nothing. But the best bit, is it me, or the best bit of an Easter egg is not all the little bits you get with it, which aren't ever very many. They brand them as this brand and that brand you get. But actually, it's the Easter egg. What is it about Easter egg chocolate?
It's the unique taste of Easter egg chocolate.
Yes.
It's the air inside, it must be, that
You think
suddenly...
The whole makes it taste better. What is that?
I
don't
think
know.
it's the thickness.
It is the thickness.
It's not as thick as a standard chocolate bar. It's a lot thinner.
And you get random bits where you get a thick bit and a thin...
So good.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That
but
may be what's
I'm surprised at the
good.
price, because, your bog standard Easter eggs are normally about £1.50, £1.99.
It depends how big you're going. Those are very small now, though, aren't they? But obviously, shoplifting we know is on the increase, and it's not a crime, is it? If you steal less than £200 worth, so you can get quite a few Easter eggs for that. Yeah, so it's just a misdemeanour sort of thing. It's antisocial behaviour, so you don't get prosecuted. You won't get arrested for anything under £200. That is not to tell you to go out and do that, but you would get a fair number of Easter eggs. But you'd also be seen. They're not kind of easy to kind of have around you.
What happened with Easter eggs? You see, when I was younger, when you remember this? When you
go on.
when you used to get an Easter egg.
What are you trying to say?
When you cracked open the Easter egg,
yes,
the sweets were inside.
Oh, yeah, no.
And now they're just
like a piñata or something.
Yes,
like a piñata with mini eggs
It was sealed, and you had to bash it, and it would. Yes, you're completely correct.
And
that
now
is
they're just
in the olden days that I remember,
the same
Stephen.
box.
I do remember. Yeah, and now it is it's all packaging now. But I do object to the packaging of Easter eggs because we're trying to be so kind of. You get there's the plastic thing around the egg. There's all the cardboard. There's a lot.
A lot of them are just cardboard now, but it's still excessive cardboard.
It is excessive cardboard, and you're paying for all of that packaging. But I do have to say that you just think, oh, you'd get much better value if you just bought the chocolate, but then you don't get the thinness and the thickness of the egg. I know.
I'm
so it's got to be done.
Both have that same.
We
thought,
both have
Susan.
that same thought.
Maybe that's a female.
But the headline on the Mirror is quite fun. They've gone with egg, steal or borrow.
Oh.
to be a sub-editor again. Those are the days.
Those security tags that I've seen on some really strange items in the supermarket. I don't know about you, but I've seen security tags on butter.
Well, that's
butter's become very expensive all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But the item it says in that article that is stolen the most, the ones that are whipped the most, bananas. If you're stealing a banana, I would suggest it's because you're hungry.
Yeah, someone wanted a snack, isn't it?
Possibly. You know, bananas are the biggest. They sell more. Supermarkets sell more bananas than anything else by miles.
More than anything.
Anything in the supermarket, bananas are always the biggest seller by miles.
Really? And yet we all have bananas that are going off that we have to make into banana bread because we don't eat them quick enough.
Oh, is that why you made banana bread? You've given me bread with going off bananas.
That makes the best. That makes the best. You can't make them with fresh bananas.
Oh, right.
Susan, back me up. They have to be well done.
Well ripened.
Well ripened, yes.
Chucking the rest in the bin.
No.
Andy, Sunday Telegraph. The BBC is proud to be progressive, but what does it mean by progressive?
Well, I guess that depends on who you ask, but this is a leaked recording from a few years ago where the Director General, Tim Davies, said, and I think he's right, by the way, he said, "We at the BBC do a reasonably good job of walking the joyous tightrope of the culture wars where being progressive, diverse and doing the things we should be proud of is not woke." And his point was, actually, the BBC is an organisation that is forward-looking, that is embracing the future. And what organisation actually would not want to be embodying all of those values? So I think fair enough.
He's just talking the talk there, though, isn't he? I've just written that down. He's walking the joyous tightrope of the culture wars, aren't we all? What does it mean?
Yes, I don't know what that means.
I think I do know what it means. I think what it means is that more so pretty much than any other organisation, the BBC, partly because we pay the licence fee, and yes, the BBC needs to be accountable to all of the people who pay that, the BBC is more in the crosshairs than pretty much any other organisation when it comes to their output, what they put on screen, you know, what their presenters do and say. And as I said, to some extent, that's right.
It doesn't stop Gary Lineker, does it?
Well, but there has been a massive furore about that, hasn't it? And I think when he talks about walking a tightrope, the Gary Lineker thing is a classic example, isn't it?
But then nothing changed.
Well,
did it?
And does he say they're not woke? The BBC is not woke?
He says the BBC is not woke.
Yeah, I think I would disagree with that.
And I think there are lots of people commenting on this piece, including Richard Tice, who are saying that is the case. He does say, however, that the BBC is in danger of groupthink. And I think that is absolutely right, is that if you have a very sort of London-centric media organisation with lots of people who come from similar backgrounds, then of course you might end up with a particular view being projected on the screen.
A lot of the BBC now is a media city in Manchester.
Yeah, but they shipped all the people up.
Yeah, they did take
from
a lot.
London.
Well, I know a lot of people who did actually work locally who did get jobs at Media City. So there was a lot of that relocation because they had to, because you couldn't just put people out of work.
No.
But at least they do have a big hub in the north.
See, what I don't think people understand, if you're not associated with the media in any way, shape or form, what you won't understand, why would you understand, that people who run these things do come from a normally quite well-off, often southern, but it's a totally different middle-class background. And it's why I've never really got on with management in other places.
Well, the BBC also...
Because people, they just don't like me. Because I'm just like some northerner who speaks his mind, and they're just like, they don't like it.
Well, they also used to have a rule, I don't know whether they do anymore, that you had to have a degree to work in any capacity at the BBC. And I don't have a degree. I did the same course as Anne Diamond did, a 2-year journalism course to get into journalism. But that wasn't a degree, it was a vocational course. So I never even went for jobs at the BBC when I first started in television, because I thought, well, they won't even look at me because I don't have a degree. And I don't think that, I can't understand really why that would be relevant, particularly if you've got the right qualifications and experience.
No, exactly.
So they kind of do themselves out of kind of certain areas of society if you do that sort of thing, I would think.
Andy, can we talk about the love of my life, which is Taylor Swift?
Oh, yeah, please, can we? So, an Oxford graduate who has written her dissertation on Taylor Swift and said that she is more culturally important, or as culturally important, as Shakespeare, Chaucer and Wordsworth. And she makes her case... She makes her case in a variety of ways. She says Taylor's an inescapable global phenomenon. Her current tour has added $3.6 billion to the US economy, that her lyrics will be remembered in centuries to come. And the V&A in London, the V&A Museum, and Ellie, I think if everything goes south at GB News, you have another job waiting for you, because the V&A is recruiting for a Taylor Swift superfan advisor.
Oh, you'd be good at that,
suited to me, isn't it?
It might be. The problem with this article is, and there's
nonsense.
That it's terribly
several.
written.
It's not brilliantly written, and we've been trying to work out what she wrote her dissertation. Is it romantic how all my elegies eulogise me?
Oh, my what?
Elegies, eulogise. I don't understand what the title of that means.
No, neither of us
Maybe
understand that.
I'm just being stupid. But also, the fact that Taylor Swift... I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. I think she is great. I think that the economic power that she wields when she rolls into town and does her...
Well, that's impressive.
...is impressive. I think
churns out bland tunes.
Well, that's a matter of taste, and that is up to you. If you don't like her music, that's absolutely perfectly fine.
I don't like it. I think it's perfectly fine. It's just bland. It's just everyday pop music.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is. And but she does kind of quote Wordsworth, and she has written Romeo and Juliet, a song.
She's a great lyricist.
She's but I don't think she is the best lyricist ever.
No.
If you're going to kind of open an exhibition and talk about, country music lyrics, Dolly Parton. I mean, Dolly Parton wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You in one day. And, I mean, she has kind of lyrics and quotes to live by. Find out who you are and do it on purpose is one of Dolly's. And when someone shows you their true colours, believe them. I always think that's a great Dolly Parton quote. These are the kind of things... And Dolly has been around for a long time. When Taylor's been around as long as Dolly, then maybe this would be a bit more justified.
She will be.
I think she will be, yeah.
She could be.
She's really captured, like, a cultural zeitgeist for a particular group of people.
Has she?
She really has.
Stephen.
Oh, yeah.
I do worry about her love life, though, because if she does ever find someone to fall in love with and settle down with...
I think this could be it now. This is it.
She's sorted. Travis Kelce.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, they are. They're like the Posh and Becks of the US. This is it.
Couple more weeks,
space, Susan.
and she'll be moving on.
There'll be an engagement, just you...
Well, we'll talk about that next time I'm on, and she'll be on to somebody else by then.
I should think you're probably right. No. Get a grip.
No,
better than Wordsworth.
She's a nice person as well. She gave £10,000 to everybody on the tour, all of her crew.
Oh, not everyone.
That's lovely.
Generous.
Oh.
No, the crew who work with her.
Oh, right.
Very nice.
There you go. Well, bear that in mind when you're rich and famous. Thanks, both.
Yes.
Here's the weather.
Thank you. Let's look at the weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got some heavy rain across southern parts of England and Wales today, turning quite windy as well, but brighter for many of us. This morning, a mixed picture. We've got the heavy rain across parts of Devon, Cornwall, southwest Wales, slowly pushing its way eastwards through the day. Elsewhere, some mist and fog to start with, but this should lift and break. And then there'll be plenty of sunny spells, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. A few showers possible here and perhaps northern England later, but the winds will increase across southern coastal counties of England, perhaps Wales too. Gales for some. Outbreaks of heavy rain could lead to some localised flooding. Temperatures near average for the time of year, so in any sunshine, not feeling too bad further north. As we go through into the evening time, we'll see the heavy rain continue, perhaps transferring more into southeastern areas, with the rain becoming lighter across the southwest. Elsewhere, clear spells, temperatures dropping below freezing under the clearest skies in Scotland, holding up under the cloud and the strengthening wind further south and east. So a grey start to Monday here. Outbreaks of rain generally holding on across the far southeast, but eventually clearing later on in the day. Elsewhere, a bright day, mixture of sunny spells, scattered showers. Best of the sunshine across the north and the west of the UK. Quite a keen northeasterly breeze for parts of England, particularly near the coast, which will make it feel quite chilly for the time of year. Temperatures on face value generally near average for the time of year.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
(2024), a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Welcome to the show. Superb stuff, great footage. So you're right in the thick of it there. What's the mood on the ground?
Well, I've left there now. I've actually now come to that EU Council summit that I was talking about. It's still pretty chaotic. The entire city of Brussels has been completely clogged with these tractors, sort of three abreast in most of the roads across the city. The people of Brussels aren't particularly happy. I mean, this is sort of reminiscent for some people of the Just Stop Oil protests, you know, people gluing themselves. People are unable to get to hospital appointments, and there's a lot of upset about the destruction that's happening on the streets of Brussels today. But on the other side, there's also the protests, which the farmers are saying that EU green laws simply are not able to fit with what they need to do to keep their businesses going. And just before the protests happened, we saw the European Commission actually make some concessions to the farmers' protests. And this is on the demands that were put on them to set aside somewhere in the region of 5% of their land for regrowing for biodiversity. A lot of the farmers have said that's not possible, and the European Commission has said that they can delay that coming in. So they have won a small concession with these protests.
And Jack, there's a feeling as well, a huge dissatisfaction that the European Union has managed to find 50 billion euros in aid to send to Ukraine, and yet farmers in particular are on the receiving end of net zero targets, taxation on diesel and endless red tape. So many farmers, Jack, saying they're measuring ditches to see if they have to drain them or not. There are minimum requirements on the width of battery hen enclosures, endless red tape. As Jeremy Clarkson pointed out in Clarkson's Farm in Britain, they've simply had enough, and they're shouting, Ursula von der Leyen, we are here.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 25th of February. Today, Lee Anderson is suspended from the Conservative Party as Tories come to grips with Islamophobia claims.
Private security has been deployed for MPs as police warn of a radicalising moment.
The US and Britain have launched another round of strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen.
2 years on from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Boris Johnson has visited the front line, reaffirming his support for the country.
In spite of everything, there's
gallant, heroic Ukrainians are fighting on, and I've got absolutely no doubt that they are going to win.
Donald Trump defeats Nikki Haley in her home state of South Carolina, putting him a step closer to a 2020 rematch.
I was just informed that we got double the number of votes that has ever been received in the great state of South Carolina.
There was Six Nations glory for Scotland as they retain the Calcutta Cup at England's expense at Murrayfield. In the cricket, meanwhile, England are underway with the bats in their second innings on day 3 of the 4th test in Ranchi. We look back on all the day's Premier League action and ahead to the Carabao Cup final this afternoon at Wembley.
Oh, good morning. We've got some mist and fog patches, quite chilly first thing, but heavy rain already across the southwest. Find out all the details for the day ahead coming up in the programme.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News. People are getting quite confused with your quote.
Oh, right.
Earlier, you can never be too thin or too rich. We can't quite decide who said it first.
Yeah, Theresa got in touch before and said it was the Duchess of Windsor. Somebody else has said, who was it? Coco Chanel.
Yeah, Sue says it's not the Duchess of Windsor. You can never be too thin or too rich. It was Dorothy Parker. Yeah, and Penny says it was Coco Chanel.
Patricia says it was Jackie Kennedy. So there you go. So I don't know.
We're not any the wiser, are we?
Clearly Googling it doesn't help. So imagine what you're doing. On Easter eggs, because apparently they're getting security tags because they're all being nicked. Paul from Perth says boycott Easter eggs as they're too expensive. But you can't. Can you? You can't boycott Easter eggs. What about the kiddies?
The joy.
You've got to get the kids an Easter egg.
And like Susan and I were saying, it's the chocolate.
Oh,
Thinness of the chocolate that makes it so good. By the way, I've just Googled that quote. Wallace Simpson.
Well, that's the Duchess of Windsor.
Oh, well, that would be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Margaret de Valois.
Valois.
Oh, so there you go. Anyone could have said it, frankly.
Stephen King as well. I don't know.
No, it can't be Stephen. You can be too thin, for the record.
Yes.
There you go. Can you be too rich, though? Ooh, I'd like to try it out and find out.
You've done the Easter egg ones, haven't you?
No, I've only done the top one.
OK, there you go. Carol in Spain says here in Spain they're charging €10 to €15 for a normal Easter egg. Wow.
Ouch.
A lot of money. Why is that?
Jeff says if you don't like the price, stop buying them and then the price will fall. I don't know.
Again, you can't boycott Easter.
Well, no, not for the kids. You've got to buy the kids.
That's like boycotting Christmas. You couldn't do it.
No.
And on pubs, 29 pubs are closing in the UK every single week. Dawn says, you talked about the closure of pubs. We are losing our working men's clubs as well. That's a good point. My father was in a skiffle band and I grew up in the clubs. There was a community hub, a place for families, not as expensive as pubs. A lot of bands, groups, singers and comedians started their careers in these clubs too. It's such a shame we're losing them.
Yeah, and it was always a big thing. I mean, where I'm from, it was always, always went to the rugby club. Everyone had the wedding reception in the rugby club and all that sort of thing. And the big club that I was in with the PM event the other Monday, just called the Big Club. But I mean, it's, and they do all sorts in there. They had bingo nights and dance nights, and even a foam party was advertised,
really?
I noticed on the wall. So something for everyone.
Yeah, you don't see those, really.
But you don't want those sort of places to close, because they're the lifeblood of a community sometimes. There you go. Mind you, maybe we should go to Castle Street, Edgeley in Stockport. Says Andy. There are 5 traditional pubs still going strong in a stretch just half a mile.
Oh, well, that's good news.
So we can go there. It's good for a pub crawl, that. You don't have to crawl so far, do you?
No, you don't need to crawl very far at all.
There you go. Anyway,
it's a shuffle.
A pub shuffle. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, to our top story this morning, former Conservative Deputy Chairman Lee Anderson has been suspended from the party after refusing to apologise for comments aimed at London Mayor Sadiq Khan.
Yeah, he said the mayor had given the capital away and was controlled by Islamists. Well, yesterday, Sadiq Khan had this to say.
Look, these comments from a senior Conservative are Islamophobic, are anti-Muslim and are racist.
And swiftly in the afternoon, Anderson was dropped, issuing this statement. I fully accept they had no option but to suspend the whip in these circumstances. However, I'll continue to support the government's efforts to call out extremism in all its forms, be that anti-Semitism or Islamophobia.
Well, meanwhile, today, the Telegraph and the Sunday Telegraph and the Sunday Times are saying some MPs are being given more security due to the rising extremism threat.
Well, let's get some reaction now from former government advisor Claire Pearsall. Good to see you this morning, Claire. So what do you make of all of this? Are these comments worthy of suspension?
Yes, I don't think the Prime Minister really had much choice when suspending the whip from Lee Anderson. You can't let comments like that just go unchallenged. He was given the opportunity to apologise and he appears not to have done so. And it just stokes up an argument, which is actually a really important argument, looking at the rise of Islamists within the country, because there is a problem. I don't think anybody could deny that. But you cannot allow racism to take hold within the House of Commons for an elected representative to say such a comment without there being consequences. And I think that Lee Anderson needs to have a real hard think about how he presents his arguments in the future.
Is it racist, though? I know that it's when you delve into the detail of it, it would seem to be the racist argument is against Sadiq Khan for saying his mates are running the capital, whatever, something along those lines, even though the main criticism is about Islamists, by which we tend to mean Islamic extremists.
But that's the difficulty when you want to have a nuanced conversation like that, to put something out there which is very, very black and white, accusing the Mayor of London of having Islamist mates, as the quote was. Yeah, absolutely, that is racist and needs to be called out. If it was clumsy wording, then that should have been part of an apology. But it seems a little deliberate, and it seems as if it was so ill thought through, and it's going to just put fuel on a fire which is already incredibly dangerous. You look at the situation in Parliament, you look at the scenes that we saw on Wednesday evening. Now, none of us want that to happen. None of us want our democracy to be overrun. But you absolutely have to have a proper conversation about racism in all forms, just as we did with the likes of sexism and homophobia in the past. You need to look at all sides of this. You need to come down with a way of dealing with it. And I think that the police, especially the Metropolitan Police, have a real case to answer within London for allowing these marches to continue with the slurs that are being spoken on the streets of London and images being put up, projected onto the side of the Houses of Parliament. Now, that is a matter for the police, not for particularly Sadiq Khan, and that needs to be able to be stopped, and stopped immediately.
Isn't the argument there that Sadiq Khan basically is the man, the main politician responsible for the Metropolitan Police? And it goes... Malcolm's been in touch this morning saying if Lee Anderson is wrong, why are a number of Sunday papers headlining with the news that the taxpayer is providing security for MPs to protect them against the threat from Islamic extremists? I mean, as you say, I just wonder how wrong it is. He's clearly said it in a very clumsy way, and as you said at the beginning, this has to be, you've got to use careful language, you've got to use precise language, but people are jumping on the gist of the language, which is, according to people getting in touch with us, well, he's got a point.
And I do think there is a point when you are looking at Islamists who believe in a sort of caliphate to run a country and bringing that over into the United Kingdom to bring down our democracy. Now, that absolutely shouldn't be allowed. It should be stopped. But that is a minority of people. But I think you lose the kind of conversation that you want to have by labelling everybody who is Muslim as an Islamist, because that just isn't true. It is racist and it is offensive, just in the same way that every gay person was deemed to be immoral back in the 1970s. Now, you can't have that kind of conversation. You need to be able to deal with this debate properly. Yes, there is a problem. it needs to be dealt with, but you don't need the flames to be stoked by really quite offensive and ill-thought-through comments put out there by an elected representative. You can't let that stand. Sadiq Khan, as Mayor, does have a responsibility, but I think ultimately the Metropolitan Police and Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner, need to step up and actually do some policing on the streets.
OK, Claire Pearsall, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Do let us know what you think on that one. gbviews@gbnews.com.
See, I don't know. I don't know if he was saying that every Muslim is an Islamist. It's not what I took from it. But the problem is we can all take different things from what he said because it was said it wasn't specific enough. It was. I think he said himself it was clumsy.
Yeah, that's exactly the wording he used. He says, let me see, I might have it here. My words may have been clumsy. They were born out of sheer frustration at what is happening to our beautiful capital city. And some commentary on social media saying that it was actually about soft policing, about this two-tier policing. And that's really what the crux of that was
But the problem is it's open to interpretation. Yes. And I think Claire is right when she says what is very dangerous is stoking the flames of something which is already a very hot issue. And that's why language is so important. But what you can't do, I think what is dangerous is then try to just it's why we're talking about it now, really, is you can't just entirely shut it down and go, well, that's absolutely wrong. And therefore, out you go. I think you've got to try and look at some of try and understand what he was trying to say, even if he didn't say it correctly. Correct. I mean, I do not support Islamophobia in any way, or racism or anti-Semitism or any of it. You know, I won't stand for it. My initial reaction to what he said was that it didn't strike me as Islamophobic in that sense. But listening, it's why it's important to listen to all views, because our first commentator, Jack Rowlock, we spoke to at 6 o'clock, he said some things he thought it was Islamophobic. And some of the stuff he said I thought did make sense. And I started to reassess it slightly.
That's why it's good to listen.
I'm still no nearer a conclusion.
I think we can safely say, though, that words are important and they need to be chosen wisely. And rhetoric, maybe on both sides, anti-Semitic or Islamophobia, needs to be dialed down. Yeah, because what we're seeing on the front page of the papers is that MPs are having to be given additional security because of safety fears. And that's the reality.
Which is ridiculous.
So
should never be in that position.
Never.
Well, yeah, dial it down, exactly right.
Dial it down across the board, I think. Just all be a little bit careful of the words we're using.
Yeah, fair point.
That's my 2 pennies worth.
No, it's quite right. But keep your thoughts coming through on that one if you would like to. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, British and American forces last night launched another series of strikes on Houthi rebels. Some 18 locations were struck.
Well, the Pentagon said they were directed at storage facilities, drones and a helicopter that belong to the militant movement.
Well, the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has confirmed RAF Typhoons joined US allies in attacking various missile and drone launching sites.
Well, let's talk to the former head of counter-terrorism at the MOD, Major General Chip Chapman. Chip, as always, it's good to see you this morning. Do we know how successful this latest raid was?
You won't know until they've conducted a battlefield damage assessment. And if it wasn't successful, then they will re-attack. So that will be conducted in the post-strike period to see if there does need to be a re-attack. There's really 2 types of attacks which have been going on, because this is somewhere around the 35th attack by the coalition, and the Brits have been involved in 4. So this is what we call deliberate targeting. The other targeting by the Americans, when the Brits haven't been involved, is dynamic targeting. The reason for that is there is a difference between the capabilities of the US and the UK. So the US can attack things where there's imminency of launch based on their satellite and drone capability, which the Brits don't have in the region.
Are we ramping up our attacks? Because it does sound like quite a big attack last night. 18 locations hit.
I don't think so. So the first attack by the combined forces was on the 10th of January, and this isn't as large as that. It's just that the targeting happens when you're trying to establish the purpose which this is for, and there are 3 purposes, really. The first one is individual and collective self-defence. The second one which is ongoing, is to disrupt and degrade the Houthi capability. And the most important one is to restore stability in the Red Sea, Gulf, Bab el-Mandeb, and the Gulf of Aden. And all the Houthi attacks in February have actually been in the Gulf of Aden. The other thing which is important to note, which hasn't got much news this week, is that on the 19th of this month, another defensive operation was launched by the EU, a thing called Op Aspides, which is a defensive maritime security operation to protect against the strikes in the sort of multi-domain arena. And by that, they mean both the subsurface, surface, and drone attacks that the Houthis are capable of. So you have two operations ongoing, really. The first one, defensive operations, both the EU one and Operation Prosperity Guardian. And they've got the offensive operations, and the only ones with the capability to do that at the moment are the British and the Americans. But it's all underpinned by international law, because freedom of navigation is the bedrock of international trade. And the UN Security Council Resolution 2722 of the 10th of January condemned the Houthi operations and asked them to cease. And both the Chinese and the Russians didn't vote against that. So it's established principle by everyone that freedom of navigation under the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea needs to be unimpeded. And there will be an implication if this doesn't happen. So the rerouting, which is going on by multiple ships at the moment, does upend the global supply chains. And only this week, India said that this might, for example, have an impact on job losses in India. And it's that which is important for the future, and possibly a rise in global inflation.
To all of this, because the Houthi spokesperson's come out this morning, defiant statement, just saying the attacks are going to continue.
Well, the Houthis see themselves as part of the axis of resistance. That is, they're a sub-state group along with the Hamas and Hezbollah, which are powered by the money from Iran. They give probably $100 million a year. Partly this is to do with, of course, what's going on in Israel and Gaza. But the first Houthi strike actually occurred in 2016 to try and do what we call sea denial in the Red Sea. And indeed, the first defensive maritime construct was in 2019 with a thing called the International Maritime Security Construct. So this is partly related to Israel-Gaza, is not wholly related to Israel-Gaza. And that doesn't mean that the international law of the sea doesn't still apply, and that freedom of navigation still should apply to the Houthis as to everyone else.
Okay. Chip, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
At 18 minutes past 8, let's take a look at some other stories coming into the newsroom. And former President Donald Trump has defeated Nikki Haley in the South Carolina Republican primary overnight. Trump is now the firm favourite to claim the Republican nomination.
But now there's a spirit that I have never seen. We ran two great races, but there's never been a spirit like this. And I just want to say that I have never seen the Republican Party so unified as it is right now.
Well, Nikki Haley isn't going anywhere yet, at least. She continues her campaign for the nomination.
I'm a woman of my word. This has never been about me or my political future. We need to beat Joe Biden in November. I don't believe Donald Trump can beat Joe Biden.
The body of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been handed over to his mother. He unexpectedly died in prison 10 days ago. His death certificate suggested it was of natural causes. His spokeswoman says it's still not clear whether authorities will allow relatives to hold a funeral the way his family wants and the way he deserves.
We were talking earlier, there's a piece in the papers about getting fat.
Oh, yes.
If you work from home. Because you're lazy, you get up late.
The fridge is too close.
You snack, and you put on a bit of timber by working from home. Apparently, So there you go. So it's the Sunday Telegraph, I think, telling you how to lose that extra weight by doing things like having an exercise snack instead of a food snack. Well, that doesn't hit the same buttons, does it? I mean, I think it's absolute codswallop. However, Crystal's been in touch. It's all about routine.
Morning, Crystal.
It's all about routine. She says, good morning. Both me and my husband work from home and we have a strict routine. 6 o'clock, wake up and watch GB News.
Very good.
Catch one of the latest news and you guys. 7 o'clock, do morning exercise in front of the news in case I miss anything. 8 o'clock, they must do it for an hour. Get showered and dressed for work. No PJs or tracksuits.
That's very good.
That is good.
I'll be in the PJs.
Puts you in the right mental mood. 8:30, put GB News on and log in. She makes coffee at 10, lunch between 12 and 1, no snacks in between. Everything, it's all self-discipline, and it helps to have a good news show on in the background.
Very good.
So there you go, Crystal. So if you do want to work from home, clearly we're the key to doing it correctly.
Well, very good. And Crystal, I'm so impressed. That is a lot of discipline.
It is. It's interesting about getting dressed. If you don't get dressed, you're never ready for the day.
No, it's true. You've got to brush your hair, brush your teeth, and you're ready for the day.
Do you know what? I sneak a little bit when I go home from work after this. Sometimes because we have a little nap. Say we don't
go
home
together.
together.
Yeah.
But have a little nap. But I leave my shirt on.
Do you?
And then I can get up.
You do, actually. When you send me selfies, you're always in your shirt in bed. That's a bit weird.
Yeah, but it just means then when I do get up, I can just pull my jeans on and I've got jeans and a shirt on. And
No, you need to be in your trackies or your PJs.
Oh, no.
I get straight into my dressing gown. Doesn't matter what time of the day it is. If I'm at home, I'm in my dressing gown.
Really?
Yep.
Even when you're cooking banana bread?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Definitely when I'm baking.
Got those bits of fluff on it.
Yeah.
Floating to the top of the custard.
Stop. My dressing gown is... and then an apron on top. I do wear an apron.
Dressing gown and apron?
Yeah, it's a lovely look.
Right, I want to see a picture of that.
I will. And a pineapple on my head.
Oh, wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
You might want to stay indoors today, particularly if you're in the southeast, because the weather's going to be pretty terrible. Let's get the details from Greg.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got some heavy rain across southern parts of England and Wales today, turning quite windy as well, but brighter for many of us. This morning, a mixed picture. We've got the heavy rain across parts of Devon, Cornwall, southwest Wales, slowly pushing its way eastwards through the day. Elsewhere, some mist and fog to start with, but this should lift and break. And then there'll be plenty of sunny spells, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. A few showers possible here and perhaps northern England later, but the winds will increase across southern coastal counties of England, perhaps Wales too. Gales for some. Outbreaks of heavy rain could lead to some localised flooding. Temperatures near average for the time of year, so in any sunshine, not feeling too bad further north. As we go through into the evening time, we'll see the heavy rain continue, perhaps transferring more into southeastern areas with the rain becoming lighter across the southwest. Elsewhere, clear spells, temperatures dropping below freezing under the clearest skies in Scotland, holding up under the cloud and the strengthening wind further south and east. So a grey start to Monday here. Outbreaks of rain generally holding on across the far southeast, but eventually clearing later on in the day. Elsewhere, a bright day, mixture of sunny spells, scattered showers. Best of the sunshine across the north and the west of the UK. Quite a keen northeasterly breeze for parts of England, particularly near the coast, which will make it feel quite chilly for the time of year. Temperatures on face value generally near average for the time of year.
Greg, thank you very much. Coming up, we're going to be talking about how Sainsbury's is using AI, apparently, to tackle shoplifting. How that works, I don't know, but we'll find out.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Are you across this microaggression story?
I'm across microaggressions. I'm also across XL bullies.
You would not last 5 minutes.
Oh, for God's
So
sake,
basic-
civil servants, give me strength.
So civil servants have been taught not to roll their eyes. Something you do very well. We both do it quite a lot, actually.
Because it's seen as an act of microaggression. This, by the way, this costs the taxpayer, this
Yes.
training, £160,000. What the hell is going on in our woke civil service? Who cares if someone rolls their eyes in exasperation?
What the hell is going on in our civil service, full stop, if the way that civil servants are communicating with each other is rolling their eyes and looking at their phones? I mean, is the government being run by people who are essentially acting to each other like stroppy teenagers?
Yeah.
But I'm all right with people, because, you see, I would be in defence of eye rolling.
So me too, I couldn't care less.
But do you know why? Because I want people to give me their genuine reaction, as long as it's not deeply offensive. But I want to know how people feel. And what they're being told here, civil servants are being taught, and of course this is an area of employment law, because people are taking cases against their bosses who roll their eyes at them. They're saying they're being encouraged to say nothing and nod their heads to promote transparency and inclusion. Don't show what you really think, just nod your head.
But I think that comes with then saying what you really think, and this is the key problem, and what these courses are trying to establish. And I looked into some of them when I was researching this, and it's not saying hide what you're feeling. It's saying, rather than huffing and puffing and rolling your eyes, if you've got a disagreement with someone, say I've got a disagreement with someone. Because otherwise, you can't have an effective workplace if people are sort of just passively, aggressively huffing at each
Why
other.
do these civil servants need to be taught this? Why do people need to be taught this? This is just normal discourse in a normal working day. You don't need a seminar on it.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, the supermarket chain Sainsbury's is trialling new AI security cabinets to help prevent shoplifting in alcohol aisles. It's the latest bid to tackle an epidemic of shoplifting and thefts that have plagued supermarkets throughout the UK.
Yes, so should there be, I suppose in that sense, zero tolerance for all of this? I mean, I would just assume there was anyway. Let's talk to businesswoman Geeta Sidhu-Rob, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
I mean, what do you reckon to this idea that things are going to be locked away and in effect, a computer will decide whether we can access a cabinet or not?
The thing is that one way to look at this is that people that are shoplifting, when they get criminal records as a result of shoplifting, I know it's over 200 quid, but even a misdemeanour does go on your record. And what you've taken is somebody stupid trying to steal candy or children thinking it's a dare, and you've given them a criminal record, and the rest of their life is completely shifted because of this one stupid thing that they did when they were children. And so that's something I think we want to try and prevent as much as we can right up front. But shoplifting alcohol is it feels like a completely different thing. It feels like you're not doing it because you're hungry. It feels like you're doing it because you want to go off and get hammered. And I have very little sympathy for that. So if you're going to go through AI, I mean, what does it do? You press a button and then you go in and...
Yes, it's like pressing a doorbell, apparently. You touch the screen and then the cabinet opens. So presumably some AI software is going, all right, you're an adult and we've got a picture of you entering, going into the cabinet. And they probably like a mini bar where they know what you've taken out as well.
Yes, I can imagine.
I was thinking like border control, when when you scan your passport and then walk through. It's a little bit like that.
Something.
Well, I mean, yes, I guess what you're doing though is you're making. But then if you're going to use, I was going to say you're making everyone's life more difficult. But actually, if you're going to look at the fact that the people that are really hurt by this are the small shops. Small shops really struggle because they have very low margin what they're doing. And when people come in and shoplift, because they're the most available, because they don't have as much money to spend on putting security things up in place to help themselves. So they really struggle. They can't afford that AI. They're not going to be able to do it. And what we're doing is picking something gimmicky that a big supermarket's going to be able to use that already makes an enormous amount of profit.
You see, it sounds to me as though we're shifting responsibility much more to the retailer. I saw someone being stopped for shoplifting the other day. They still walked out the store, but they got the stuff off him. But presumably there is CCTV and all that, and the police should go and they should prosecute.
So what they apparently do is, and I didn't realise this till I was doing a bit of research, because shoplifting has really never figured in my kind of, activities, as it were. But what they do is they tag you as someone that's been a shoplifter, and then they keep tagging you till you reach an appreciable amount.
Right.
And then when you come back in and you've reached a certain amount, they have the police waiting for you, and then they grab you then.
Right.
So the fact that they've let you go doesn't mean that you've got away with it.
Right.
It just means they've literally logged you on their system.
Is that a more sensible way to go then in terms of what we would call zero tolerance? Because what you're looking at then is someone who is a perpetual shoplifter rather than just a one-off incident.
But why aren't we doing something about it? Now, try and speed at a traffic light, OK? You're going to speed at a traffic light and they're going to grab you, they're going to give you points, they're going to go, listen, either you have points or you go and take that terrifying driver's ed thing, which I may have taken once or twice. And you're going to... Why don't we have that for shoplifters? Why do we not have an approach that says, here's a thing that is happening, and that's really emotional. Because the whole driver's ed thing, they teach you people are going to die if you do this. They really get to you emotionally. Why don't we do that instead of just looking at it as how are we going to stop you and catch you?
But I guess that depends on who is shoplifting, because the boss of the co-op was speaking recently and saying he quite literally can't get the staff in his stores because they're subjected to so much violence and abuse, and a lot of it is criminal gangs who are shoplifting. It's not people in desperate need, it's not people who are literally stealing to eat, it's people who are trying to profit on things like baby milk, meat, alcohol, things like that, and then it's going on to the black market and they're selling it for a profit.
But if you're stealing baby milk, you're not stealing that as a criminal conspiracy, you're stealing that because your baby's hungry.
Well, no, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Really? They use it to cut up drugs.
Oh, my gosh, I was being all emotional about that.
Yeah.
That's really quite special.
You see, that oddly enough, you mentioned that I got stopped by someone the other day selling a big issue, and she said, and I said, I haven't got any money, I can't buy one. She said, could you buy me something from the shop? I said, yeah, well, OK, what would you like? Aptamil. So I went and bought it. It was 15 quid.
Wow.
So I was like, blimey neck, well, I've said I'll buy it now, so I'll have to buy it. And then when I got home, my better half said, oh, they use that to cut up drugs.
Oh, I had no idea.
And it was just like, and I felt absolutely ripped off.
No.
I do think, though, to come back to the concept of shoplifting, there are different graduations of everything, right? So if we say everyone is a criminal gang, what that does is it traps a huge number of people that aren't criminal gangs, that are just doing it honestly because they're stupid or because they're young or because there's a dare. And if we create a blanket approach to this, we run the risk of creating a society like in the US where you end up in jail for very small stuff. And actually what's happening is we're building a massive jail population and people that have no way to then make a future for themselves.
But then we should have the situation, shouldn't we, which is what is meant to happen surely at magistrates' courts, where people follow the spirit of the law, not just the letter of the law. So if someone is going in and it's obvious that they've stolen out of need, they can be ticked off.
Or even some kind of remedial kind of version, like you're struggling. So there should be kind of a social care version of this.
Yeah.
Because I think that the society that we live in at the moment, where people are really, really struggling, when nurses and teachers are going to feed food banks, I think our conversation has to shift. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of putting idiots in jail, but I'm not a big fan of taking needy people and destroying their options forever because what they've done is something stupid, or they were hungry, or they were just being thick.
Yeah.
I think we really have to take into account the stupidity of teenagers.
Do you know what? That sounds like a very sensible approach. Well done, you're elected. I think you could be in the House of Commons very soon. Look, really good to see you this morning, Geeta. Thanks very much indeed.
You will have an opinion on that.
Sure.
Do let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Aidan's going to be here in just a second with all the sports news, including the rugby from yesterday, so don't go anywhere.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
I appreciate the story isn't in today's papers, but it has been running all week, and it's this row over the use of nitrogen hypoxia to kill this man who was on death row in Alabama.
Yeah.
And it's been linked back to you, and I wanted to ask you about it because this is intriguing, because you did a television show back in 2015 where you, I believe, tested this method of execution. Just tell me briefly about it, Michael. What happened?
I didn't test this method of execution, and it was a bit longer ago than that. But what I did do was test hypoxia. So I tested various ways in which people are killed in the United States, and asked the question as to whether there was a more humane way of doing it. So I was put into hypoxic situations, for example, into a chamber run by the Netherlands Air Force, which simulated what happens if you're in an aircraft at 30,000 feet and suddenly the windows blow out. And what happened to me was that I was almost instantly rendered incapable. As an experiment, I was trying to play with children's toys, putting triangle shapes into triangle spaces, and I was quickly unable to do that. I was asked, what is 9 minus 5? And I said 5. And then the officer who was with me, the Air Force officer who was wearing an oxygen mask, said to me, Michael, put your mask on or you will die. And I was incapable of putting my own mask on. Now, this suggested that hypoxia was very fast acting, and that you had... Obviously, I was in no pain or anything like that. I was just completely unaware. By the way, this is why, if you're on an aircraft and it depressurizes, you must put your own mask on first. But of course, I can't go on and draw conclusions. We did not experiment with nitrogen. But what I can say is it was evident to me that hypoxia renders you incapable almost instantaneously.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:37. Now, we first brought you this story on Thursday that people in a town in Cumbria, Millom, if you know it, were furious after plans were made to use 8 homes to house asylum seekers. Now, this is a place where actually people are struggling to get accommodation in the first place.
Yes, well, currently it's suffering from a housing shortage, which has led to backlash among the community.
Well, since Thursday, there's been some updates. So let's find out what's been going on. We can talk to the spokesperson for the Millom Community Action Group, Dean Miller. Morning to you, Dean. So what's the conclusion to all of this?
Morning. We had a letter from the Home Office stating that that's it. They've put a stop on it, that our area isn't suitable for asylum seekers and HMOs, as we stated from the very start of this. So common sense has prevailed, really.
Relieved, because tensions were high, weren't they, in Millom when this news that these refugees were going to be moved in?
Yeah, tensions were high. I think it was more out of confusion than anything else. I know it's been portrayed as, over the news as, vandalism and graffiti and everything, but that was just a small part of actually what's happened. Really, the community's just been totally confused. We didn't know who was actually coming into the HMOs. No one consulted us, and it just sparked a bit of anger, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because we heard from the mayor on Thursday, and she was saying that it is about the major problem here has been a complete lack of information.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, myself, I found out through a friend whose elderly mother was actually next door to one of these HMOs, and he was like, "Look, my mum's really angry. She's 85. We've got builders coming all hours, day and night, and they're telling her different things." And obviously that led to a lot of frustration, and then videos were getting purchased from videos were getting put around from different investors saying that they were, that they were actually going to take these houses. I know, like you said before, that there was 7 or 8 HMOs. These were the ones that were licensed. Behind that, we managed to stop myself and the group and Millom Town Council another extra 14, and there was still more coming in. If we hadn't have actually stood up and raised this issue, there could have been hundreds.
Yeah. Yeah, well, look, you've been heard at least on this, and it's been stopped. Dean, really good to see you this morning. As I'm from Dalton, it's nice to hear a local accent as well, so good to see you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean.
Yeah, just down the road, Millom.
Yeah, it's your neck of the woods, isn't it?
It is my neck of the woods. HMOs, in case you're wondering, houses of multiple occupancy. That gets thrown out a lot there. But clearly, there can be. Well, I'll tell you what's important with this. Whatever the rights and wrongs of it all, if the community is having its voice heard, then that's important. I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yep, certainly is.
Anyway.
Well, it's time to go through all of the latest sports news now with Ada McGee, who's with us.
Good to see you both.
Good morning. Should we start with the rugby?
Yeah, why not? This was... look, Claxon alert, I got a prediction right. I said that England would struggle at Murrayfield against Scotland, and they duly did, 30-21, and I thought that the tactical battle would centre around this incredible talent that Scotland seems to have in their ranks. Duhan van der Merwe, the one of the back page headlines today was Merwe on the dance floor.
Oh, very good, very topical.
We love that song.
He literally, it's brilliant. He literally danced around the England side. This brilliant solo try. He scored a hat-trick, and that leaves England's hopes of winning the Six Nations in really deep... Well, it's very unlikely at the minute. Also, is Scotland's... Well, no, they won...
I'm glad you didn't finish that sentence.
No, but they... Sorry. No, they won their first 2 matches, so they're in a good position. They're in pole position to start the match. If they won that, I would have given them a good chance to go on and maybe do something. Although I do think Ireland are going to be in the ascendancy. They played yesterday, beat Wales 31-7. We've got France-Italy today at 3 o'clock. There have been no surprises in this tournament so far. Every match that you would predict a winner as the favourites, they've gone on to win. So, I suppose with the exception of Ireland on the first day, I don't think many people backed them to go to Marseille and beat France the way they did, but that's automatically installed them as the favourites. England trying a new kind of expansive style of rugby, a different defensive operation under Lewis Jones, the guy who came, the assistant manager who came from South Africa, where they won the World Cup before Christmas. So it didn't really work, and that's 4 wins in a row for Scotland against England. To put it in context, England won 9 in a row against Scotland between 2009 and 2017. So they were really dominant, and then they turned it around. They found a way to win.
Oh well, good on them. It's a case. Well, fair dues.
It is.
Carabao Cup final today.
It is indeed. Now, I didn't touch on it much yesterday, but Mauricio Pochettino made some very menacing comments in the lead-up to this game, and it's rare that you see top managers put pressure on officials the way they do, that he did this time. Now, he's lost a couple of finals against Jurgen Klopp, who's coming up against this afternoon. Chelsea went to Liverpool 10 days ago. They lost 4-1. Now, they didn't lose that match because of bad officiating, but he complained on the night that a lot of officials went against Chelsea on the night. And he seemed to kind of insinuate that the referees are getting too much involved in this party atmosphere that Jurgen Klopp seems to be engendering because he's leaving Liverpool, and he seems to think that they're benefiting on decisions because of it. Now, I think that's highly unlikely. I just think Pochettino's putting some pressure on the referee today in a game where, let's face it, they are second favourites to win. But if they do win, it's the first domestic trophy in 6 years. Signs possibly that after an injection of £1 billion on players in the last 15 months or so, they could be finally reaching a bit of maturity. And Pochettino needs to win a trophy domestically as well. He didn't win anything at Tottenham.
Yeah.
Aidan, we're out of time.
Oh, no.
I'm afraid. Thanks.
You've had enough. You've had enough of me, haven't you?
Well, quick word on the... Have you got the cricket score?
Yes. England are not doing too badly. Probably roughly where I'd expect them to be if I can get to it.
We'll put you on the spot
Let's have a look. You have. Hang on a sec. England are currently 120 for 5. That's roughly where I'd expect them to be.
Right. Oh, well.
Ebb and flow.
Ebb and flow. It does, though. It does. You're
It does.
absolutely right.
It really does. You've got to keep the faith.
Well, you can flow now. Or ebb. Whichever one it is.
I like to do a bit of both. I'm a bit unpredictable.
Yeah. All right, Aidan, thank you. We've got the papers with Susan and Andy in just a couple of minutes, so don't go anywhere.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Joining us to go through what's making the news this morning is author and journalist Susan Holder and political commentator Andy Williams. Very good to see you both. Andy, let's talk about the Tory hot steppers, the hopefuls putting their best foot forward.
Yeah, so Tim Shipman in the Sunday Times is saying bitchiness, feuds and plots. No, not Paris Fashion Week, it's the rival for the Tory leadership. We have maybe about 9 months to go, I think, before the general election, but there seems to be a settled view that Rishi Sunak is going to need replacing...
Well,
it's November, I'm telling you.
I think it's going to be November as well.
May the 4th.
And, well, I think that's a Saturday, Stephen.
Yeah.
But, you know...
Hey, what?
I think that's a Saturday, isn't it?
May the 4th. I thought it was May the 4th.
May the 2nd is...
May the 2nd.
Is it? All right.
Date that's seared in my brain. But anyway, yes, I think
You a geek?
we have...
You a geek?
A geek?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, no, that's good, though. I like a bit of that.
And is it a Saturday?
It is a Saturday.
It can't be May the 4th.
No, May the 2nd.
With all the Darth Vader jokes you'll have to put to one. All the ones you were prepping.
That's a very good point. That wouldn't be good for the Tories either. But we have a variety of characters vying for the leadership if Rishi Sunak is deposed. Is it going to be Suella? Is it going to be Kemi? Is it going to be Penny?
Is it going to be Robert?
I don't think so, actually.
Robert Jenrick.
So I think
or Grant.
Grant Shapps.
I don't think so. I think Grant Shapps might lose his seat, but I think what we're looking at is the Conservatives are going to face a moment a bit like Labour did a few years ago, where they have to decide: are they going to do 10 years in the wilderness and go a bit mad, which I think is fairly likely, or are they going to be serious about it and see if they can restrict Labour to one term? And depending on who they choose, that will determine where they go.
I wonder if they would be any madder in the wilderness than they have been in power. It's an interesting thought. Could they be any madder if they were in the wilderness? I don't know that they could. They've gone quite bonkers, haven't they? Given that they've been in power for this long, that you'd have thought they'd have hit some sort of stability somewhere and some kind of,
There's no cohesion.
There's no cohesion, and even now, when they're facing what they're facing, which is kind of possible ultimate defeat and 10 years in the wilderness, you think now is the time to possibly even pretend to get behind the leader you do have. But at least they're not in the runners and riders in the papers. They're not suggesting Boris or Liz Truss. So we should be grateful for small mercies.
Although they are suggesting that Liz Truss believes she can be the queen maker in the next leadership contest. So she's revived her famous Fizz with Liz drinks events where she gathers people and tries to influence. I mean, as if anyone is still listening to this person, by the way, but apparently they are.
Well,
she does a lot of talking, actually.
She certainly
That
does.
sounds cringe, but you do Jelly with Ellie nights.
She's not trying to run the country in Ellie's defence.
I'm not running for Prime Minister. Just for the record, I don't do Jelly with Ellie now.
Can we talk about something?
But I am Ellie on the telly.
You are Ellie on the telly.
I want to be invited to Jelly with Ellie. It sounds great.
They're great. Have a look at the Mail on Sunday, just for something totally different, and go Bridget Jones.
Right. Well, I adore. Bridget Jones is back. They are going to make... I didn't realise we were up to the 4th Bridget Jones movie, which probably means I'm not up to speed, but I don't think I've seen. She had a baby in the last one. Did anybody watch that one? I didn't watch that one.
I haven't seen that one.
Now, if none of us have seen it, the question is there an appetite for another one then? Because we're not up to speed on the others.
But does it matter? Spin, though, isn't it?
Well, it is.
They just get traction for some reason.
Well, it's Renée Zellweger. It's 27 years, excuse me, since it was on our screens, and it is for the first time. Wow. We all kind of know it. If we didn't read the book, then we've all seen the first movie generally. Excuse me, I'm frogging my throat. But I do think there is an appetite for rom-coms. I'm a rom-com writer. I would say that romantic comedy is what you need when the world's in turmoil. A bit of escapism, a bit of romance, and Bridget Jones did do it very well. Renée Zellweger, the last thing I saw in was the biopic of Judy Garland, where she was phenomenal. She can do no wrong. I think she's great. I do wonder how they bring it up to date more nowadays. The problem I always had with Bridget Jones is we were told all the time that she was overweight, and she was barely a size 12. And you do think, is she really? She's not, but she was always worried about her weight. And but
there were a few issues with the plot, wasn't it? First, that's a great one. She was 9 stone, and we were meant to believe she was overweight.
Yeah,
and she was also a journalist and living in Borough Market.
But it was 27 years ago. It was 27 years ago.
Beautiful flat. Yeah.
Maybe you could then. Maybe you could. But now you couldn't. In that little chi-chi flat that kind of runs down and you're in the middle of Borough Market, wouldn't that be lovely? Yeah. But I don't know how... Apparently, though, Renée Zellweger is looking for a home to live in while she's over here filming. So if anyone's got something they want to rent to Renée Zellweger...
I've got a spare room.
Well, there you go. She's looking for a bigger place, she says now. Disappointingly, Ellie, I don't think she'll be in your spare room.
She can bunk in with me.
With her current husband.
But...
Ouch.
Well,
ouch. How catty.
I'm always introduced as the noddy holder and his current wife, and we've been together 34 years. You can be current for a very long time.
Oh, well,
I wasn't making any judgment call on Renée and whoever she's married to, whose name I don't know. TV presenter Ant Anstead, not Ant of Ant and Dec. That would be a pairing, though, wouldn't it?
Anstead.
That's his name. But I presume his first name isn't Ant. They've just called him Ant because he's called Anstead.
Anthony Anstead is what his parents think.
It could be that.
Well, Andy, we've got 1 minute. Ties are back.
Ties are back, yeah. So apparently Ties are experiencing a rebrand as they pivot to high fashion. Stephen, how many do you own?
Hundreds. About 30, maybe 40.
I would have thought it was a lot more because you're constantly trying to keep up with Ellie's dress colours. So
Yeah, but I chuck them out when they get done. I mean, these are over the years, but once
What do you do to your tie? Don't they last forever, ties?
No,
What do you do with them?
They get pot noodle down them and things.
Stained.
No, that's literally they get pot noodle down.
But Depop are saying that sales of ties on their platform are up 31% year on year. So and Depop is largely popular with people sort of in their 20s, early 30s.
Where you resell fashion, where you can go on and buy kind of second-hand
clothes.
I wouldn't buy a second-hand tie.
Would you not?
No.
Well, it's pot noodle stains.
It's not like buying Ed Sheeran's second-hand pants. If people can do that, then we can buy a tie. Do you think smart casual now means smart up top with a tie, then people are wearing trackies below because they're working from home and...
No comment. No comment.
I'm perfectly well-dressed.
Good to see you both. Miss you ever.
Thanks.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got some heavy rain across southern parts of England and Wales today, turning quite windy as well, but brighter for many of us. This morning, a mixed picture. We've got the heavy rain across parts of Devon, Cornwall, southwest Wales, slowly pushing its way eastwards through the day. Elsewhere, some mist and fog to start with, but this should lift and break. And then there'll be plenty of sunny spells, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. A few showers possible here and perhaps northern England later, but the winds will increase across southern coastal counties of England, perhaps Wales too. Gales for some. Outbreaks of heavy rain could lead to some localised flooding. Temperatures near average for the time of year, so in any sunshine, not feeling too bad further north. As we go through into the evening time, we'll see the heavy rain continue, perhaps transferring more into southeastern areas with the rain becoming lighter across the southwest. Elsewhere, clear spells, temperatures dropping below freezing under the clearest skies in Scotland, holding up under the cloud and the strengthening wind further south and east. So a grey start to Monday here. Outbreaks of rain generally holding on across the far southeast, but eventually clearing later on in the day. Elsewhere, a bright day, mixture of sunny spells, scattered showers. Best of the sunshine across the north and the west of the UK. Quite a keen northeasterly breeze for parts of England, particularly near the coast, which will make it feel quite chilly for the time of year. Temperatures on face value generally near average for the time of year.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yeah.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially, just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offender behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 25th of February. Today, Lee Anderson is suspended from the Conservative Party as Tories come to grips with Islamophobia claims.
Private security has been deployed for some MPs as police warn of a radicalising moment.
The US and Britain have launched another round of strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen.
2 years on from Russia's invasion, Boris Johnson has visited the front line, reaffirming support for Ukraine.
In spite of everything, those gallant, heroic Ukrainians are fighting on, and I've got absolutely no doubt that they are going to win.
Well, Trump defeats Nikki Haley in her home state of South Carolina, and that puts him a step closer to a 2020 rematch.
I was just informed that we got double the number of votes that has ever been received in the great state of South Carolina.
Oh, good morning. We've got some mist and fog patches, quite chilly first thing, but heavy rain already across the southwest. Find out all the details for the day ahead coming up in the programme.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
We've been talking about pub closures this morning. 29 shutting every week. CAMRA, the Campaign for Real Ale, is launching campaigns to try and put a stop to some of that. David says the reason the government is the reason they're closing is the government is taxing pubs out of business. They want these meeting places for the working classes to close. I wouldn't have thought they would want them to close. To be fair,
I imagine they like the boozer.
Well, and also, MP's like a boozer.
Yeah.
But it's good for a local economy. So I wouldn't have gone along with that. I think certainly energy prices is a big thing, and some of the taxes maybe that needs to be looked at.
All that sort of thing, business rates. Keith says the disastrous lockdowns killed it for us. We got out of the habit of going to the pub, and now we get a bottle of wine at home. They are so expensive now. We buy the bottle in the shop for less than a large glass in the pub.
That's the trouble. Phil says, as someone who uses his local 3 to 4 times a week and see my landlord struggling financially, high rents, high cost of ales, and then the dreaded VAT on top. That's what's doing it. Give them a chance and drop VAT on sales. Something has to be done, even if it's only temporarily. Plus, on the other side of it, though, whatever the government does, if you can afford it, and if you're thinking, what should we do tonight? Go and have a couple of pints down your local.
Support your local. Yeah.
Lot to be said for that. Right.
It's our culture, isn't it? Our great British culture. A large part of it.
Go and put the world to rights down the local.
I liked when he said that earlier. I thought that's exactly what it is.
It's true.
Very good.
Right, to our main news this morning. Lee Anderson has been suspended from the Conservative Party after refusing to apologise for comments aimed at the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan.
Well, let's get some reaction from GB News presenter Camilla Tominey, whose show is coming up in about 25 minutes' time. Very good morning to you, Camilla. And what do you make of it all?
Well, obviously it's dominating the front pages. I mean, the right-wing press seems to be slightly more supportive, and there's reports in the Sunday Telegraph this morning of our fellow GB News presenter Nigel Farage offering a place in reform for Lee Anderson. Meanwhile, we've got the Sunday Mirror describing him in very unflattering terms. I think what's interesting, and I'm going to be putting this to Oliver Dowden because I've got the Deputy PM on the show a little later, you know, what is the difference between what Lee Anderson has said and the concerns he's raised about Islamic fundamentalism on the streets of Britain? And let's be honest, we did witness that in full technicolor outside Parliament the other day when From the River to the Sea was projected onto Big Ben. Where does the line get drawn between what he said, and I think it's perhaps the specificity of mentioning Sadiq Khan in that context, versus, say, what Suella Braverman has said in various Telegraph op-eds about what she thinks about this sort of Muslim takeover of these protests. So I think that's an intriguing line on which I'd like to Dowden to comment. Also, I'm intrigued by this ongoing support by the government of the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle. I think we can all agree that Lindsay Hoyle is a decent man, that he's in politics for the right reasons and all the rest of it. But what happened in the Commons last week was quite scandalous. And I think that sort of suggestion that he's been leaned on by Keir Starmer and indeed his Chief of Staff, the impartial Boris Johnson investigator Sue Gray, is intriguing. There's a lot of coverage of Hoyle's future in the papers. I think safe for now, but we know that the number of MPs calling for him to go is up to 70. So it'll be a very interesting week for him next week. Be discussing that. But also, guys, guess who I've also got in? Jeremy Corbyn's former comrade, Len McCluskey, the former head of Unite. Now, his perspective on Starmer, what Starmer's doing to the Labour Party, this cabal on the left that's associated with some of these pro-Palestinian protests, I think it's going to be really intriguing. Because when we talk about MPs being intimidated, we do think back to that Corbyn era where you had to have journalists and MPs, particularly Jewish MPs, having bodyguards. We're back into that era again, and I'll be very intrigued to find out what Red Len makes of it, and indeed whether he or any of his comrades take any responsibility for the intimidation, particularly of right-wing MPs.
It's interesting. I've got to say, I'm slightly intrigued that he's agreed to come on, in a sense. I mean, that signifies that signifies a shift, doesn't it? A recognition that certainly we here on GB News are having the right conversations.
Well, I think, A, we're having the right conversations. Also, as you guys know, I mean, our critics like to say that it's all one-sided. It's really balanced. We've always got left-wing voices on the show. And as we always stress to our audience, we've got to be hearing from people who do have quite fundamental ideas about the future of left-wing politics in this country, the future of the Labour Party. At the end of the day, Len McCluskey's been very critical of Keir Starmer, says he isn't a good leader. I think he thinks that under Keir Starmer, the party don't have a chance of getting that sizable majority that's predicted. So I want to ask Red Len, well, who would you prefer? Is he wanting to sort of see another era of Corbynism? And if not Corbyn, who does he like on the left of the party? And what does he make of these divisions? Because there's also some speculation in the papers today that Blairite wing, so the likes of Tony Blair, Gordon Brown and even Alistair Campbell influencing Keir Starmer sort of behind the scenes, is rubbing Sue Gray up the wrong way. So we talk a lot, don't we, about Tory divisions, and let's be honest, it's not a good weekend for the Tory party with what's happened to Lee Anderson. But equally, I think the speculation around Keir Starmer and whether he is in charge of a steady ship also merits some scrutiny.
Yeah, I tell you what, though, this must be why the Prime Minister will be tearing his hair out this morning, because actually it was quite a good week for the government in the sense that the focus was on Keir Starmer, it was on, you know, what on earth has been going on, and it's switched, it's turned on a dime, hasn't it, that now the focus is all back on the government.
Yeah, what's the old saying, Stephen? The week is a long time in politics. But I think this could get even worse for Rishi Sunak, because there are quite a few right-wing Tories who are backing Lee Anderson. Regardless of what people listening or watching this think of what he said, they are backing him. And I did hear over the weekend, and indeed I think there's some coverage of this in the Sunday Telegraph, that people who hadn't been considering putting in letters may now be emboldened to do so because of Anderson losing the whip, because They see Anderson as somebody that really can connect the grassroots and the Red Wall. And they're thinking that, you know, there's this sort of social democrat purge within the party of righties. And if they are going to be forcing more people to reform, I mean, imagine if Anderson does now defect. What does that say about Sunak's government? You know, he claims to be a Thatcherite, and some of the behaviour seems to be, you know, the antithesis of that. So you might not support how Anderson's expressed himself, but I'm going to ask Dowden, do you want to be losing Tories to reform at this stage?
Interesting. Yeah, well, it's going to be very good to see what answers you get today. Camilla, thank you very much indeed. We'll see you at 9:30.
Thank you. Now, the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has visited Ukraine to mark the second anniversary of Russia's invasion.
Yeah, well, Mr Johnson spoke exclusively for GB News to the former Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, where he reiterated Ukraine's determination to win the war.
Hi, folks. I'm here on the second anniversary of Vladimir Putin's barbaric invasion of Ukraine. I'm here in Kyiv, where, in spite of everything, those gallant, heroic Ukrainians are fighting on. And I've got absolutely no doubt that they are going to win. And I think that with the support of the West, provided we do the right thing, give them the right support, militarily, politically, and economically, the courage of Ukrainians, their natural determination to fight for their homeland will prevail. But I'm very happy to be joined, talking to GB News, by a friend who I've worked with for years, a distinguished former ambassador, former foreign minister of Ukraine, former ambassador to London, Vadim Prystaiko. Vadim, how do you see things 2 years after this evil invasion? Are you still confident your country is going to win?
Thank you, Boris. You've seen yourself that, unbelievably so, but Ukrainians sort of feel that it's not just spring coming to Kyiv, it's today is quite warm in Kyiv, but there is the hope rising. Maybe because people like you and so many foreign dignitaries came, and they're coming not empty-handed. They're coming with ideas how to get back to Ukraine, to bring it up to the agenda of the world, how to bring the weapons, how to ramp up sanctions, how to get Russians' money be frozen all around the globe to help Ukraine to actually gain territory and regain hope.
And if you had a message to GB News viewers about what you think the UK should be doing in particular, is there one thing you'd pick out?
I believe that's my years in the UK were the pinnacle of my career, not because I was happy to be in London, which is great, I mean, by itself, because of this great support of the people there. And the government, people, regions, everywhere I felt it. I've seen Ukrainian flags. I remember everything we've been done in the parliaments, or even just talking to the soldier or person on the street who was inviting the Ukrainian refugees. All of this mounts out to what we felt in the UK. And it was actually being translated all over the Europe. You were pushing the Europeans and sometimes our friends all over the pond to do more and more. Look at where we are now. Supported by Germans, supported by France, supported by all our allies. We wouldn't be there without the UK's initial push.
Thank you, Raja. And don't forget, folks, although things look tough for Ukraine and have looked tough for the last 2 years, the simple facts are that they've kicked Vladimir Putin's armies out of more than half of the territory that they originally occupied. About 315,000 Russian troops have been killed or injured, a ratio of probably 7 to 1 when you compare it with what the Ukrainian armed forces have suffered. They've taken out thousands and thousands of Russian tanks, 40% of Russia's Black Sea fleet, and yet Ukraine's exports are now back up to pre-war levels. So I've got absolutely no doubt that with the right support from the West, Ukraine can win. And it's vital in the months ahead that we give them that support. This is an unconventional report, but here we are in Kyiv on the sad second anniversary with a Ukrainian population that, in my view, is absolutely determined still to win, and they're going to win.
Now, British and American forces last night launched another series of strikes on Houthi rebels. Some 18 locations were hit.
The Pentagon said they were directed at storage facilities, drones and a helicopter of the militant movement.
Well, the Defence Secretary has confirmed that RAF Typhoons joined US allies in attacking various missile and drone launching sites.
Let's speak now to military historian and defence analyst Chris Newton. Good to see you this morning. Chris, what do we know about these strikes?
Good morning. As you said, these are precision strikes. The targeting is 18 targets. They're US and UK joint strikes, supported by countries like Australia, Canada, Denmark, Netherlands, Bahrain, and essentially these, as you mentioned earlier, these are specifically targeting military targets, so underground weapons storage facilities, drones, missiles. So the aim of these attacks, these strikes, are to disrupt and to degrade the Houthis' abilities to conduct attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden.
What has struck me about all of this is, why are we not being more decisive in the action? This is the fourth joint action between the UK and the US. There's been other stuff that's happened without the UK involvement as well. Why is it that we're going for this sort of small attack approach rather than just trying to degrade their capability in one go?
That's a good question. Essentially, the options are, do nothing, which isn't an option. Another option is some of the other options. For example, really go after, attack Houthi-controlled Yemen. I don't think that's politically viable. There's no political appetite in that. So you're left with the middle option of containment, constant management of the situation, but of course, when you're conducting limited strikes, you get limited results. One option, which is potentially open to them, which they've already entertained, is the fact that the Houthis are receiving intelligence from this Iranian ship, the Bashad, and reportedly, according to a US media outlet, the US has already conducted a cyber attack on that. But the Bashad since then has then gone out to sea, and the Houthis are upticking their attacks as well. So maybe looking into that again, perhaps a non-kinetic or a kinetic attack. That is one potential option. But the reason why, to answer your question, the reason why we've gone for this middle option, this containment option, is I don't think there's any political appetite to escalate things any further.
OK. Chris, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, do stay with us. We're going to be talking about Odysseus, aren't we? Which
Odysseus.
Odysseus. Odysseus is something totally different, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But it's the first private moon landing, and it's landed, hasn't it? But it could be on its side.
Yeah, it's got a bit of a wobble on.
It's got a bit of a wobble
But how important is it? Yeah, we're going to talk to an astronaut for you very shortly.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
So a new poll has revealed that Gen Z or Gen Z, I don't know how I'm supposed to say it, and British boys and men are more likely to believe that feminism has done more harm than good when compared with older respondents. So the polling also found that a quarter of UK males aged 16 to 29 believe it's harder to be a man than a woman, with 1 in 5 looking favourably upon controversial influencer Andrew Tate. 37% of them also agree that the phrase toxic masculinity is unhelpful. So, with Gen Z boys increasingly holding this view, has feminism done more harm than good? Let me know your thoughts. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com, tweet me @gbnews, and make sure you take part in our poll. But I'll bring you those results shortly. Going head-to-head on this tonight are author and commentator Anna May Mangan and YouTuber and social media influencer Pearl Davies. Both of you, thank you very much. Pearl, I'll start with you. Has feminism done more harm than good, especially when it comes to these Gen Z boys?
Yes, it has. Feminism really has turned into a bunch of crybaby women that want to complain that we're not given equal opportunity when really women are given more opportunity than men. And so, yeah, I would say feminism is a hate group and it's a bunch of crybaby women.
Anna, would you like to come back to that? Crybaby women feminism, apparently.
So we've got a right lad with us tonight with Pearl and her opinions, haven't we? How could it possibly do harm? Pearl wouldn't do, I hope you vote. I assume you do. I hope you're not chained to the kitchen sink at home. I'm not sure if you've got a job, so I don't know very much about you, but you're probably, if there's a bloke doing the same thing as you, you're probably earning less than him. So of course feminism is something that it got us the vote in the first place, and it's still doing a power of good. It's just whingy men, and actually I changed that. They're lads, they're not men.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Well, 19 minutes past 9. It has been quite a week if you're a space geek like me, because the American moonlander Odysseus landed on the lunar surface. Now, there's been some confusion. It is apparently alive and well after a bit of a white-knuckle touchdown, but it is the first private spacecraft ever to reach the lunar surface, and the first from the States for more than 50 years.
Well, that's brilliant news. Lots of people talking about this week. It's being described as a new dawn for lunar missions, apparently. Well, Per Wimmer joins us now to tell us all about it.
Oh.
It's very exciting, isn't it, if you're a space nerd like Stephen and I imagine like yourself.
Absolutely. It is fascinating, and it is truly a revolutionary thing for a private company to put anything on the moon. But it's also should be seen in the context of the moon and space opening up to private companies more generally. We've seen an awful lot of money going into the space, about $15 billion of private money heading in addition to NASA's about $24 billion. So lots is happening, which then poses the big question, I suppose, who owns the moon and who is in charge?
Yeah, but I mean, what I find fascinating about this, I mean, NASA's been the main sponsor of this mission. It's gone up on a SpaceX craft, hasn't it? And then the unit itself is Intuitive Machines. It's this sort of collaboration. Is this the only way we can do things now on to get people to put their own money into these things rather than relying on a government-funded body like NASA?
Well, I think NASA has an important role to play still, because it does provide the initial contracts to private companies, in this case, $77 million worth, which is a lot of money, and it allows companies to sort of get going. Intuitive Machines was started in 2013, so it's relatively young. But given that initial boost of cash from NASA, then allows them to build a business. Now, in terms of NASA, what they want to do is go into deeper space exploration, do the difficult bit, not so much the transportation bit like SpaceX is doing with the Falcon 9, getting it up there, but also allowing increasingly private companies to do their bit so that they can do the increasingly very, very difficult bit that has no commercial sort of component to it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, in terms of the... Sorry, I'm getting into my groove now. In terms of what the mission will achieve, I mean, getting there is a big thing. Obviously, the fact that you prove that can be done privately. But a lot of the stuff on board was things like these laser-guided landing and all this sort of thing, which hasn't... One system failed completely, the other one didn't. The backup didn't work quite properly. We've got a tilt on and all the rest of it. Are they failed experiments, or do we learn from those failures?
No, first and foremost, it's a massive achievement in its own right, getting there. So full stop, just like Apollo 11 when they got there in the first place. But there were sort of 3 or 4 main missions up there, and one of them was to learn about the lunar surface a little bit, and that certainly is possible still. Secondly was to improve the guidance systems for future missions by having very, very precise reflectors so that you can see where's the orbiter, where's the lunar lander in the future. So this is just as much as a question about preparing for the future and for future missions, etc. There's also a degree of monitoring the lunar weather, which is important, just like it is here on Earth when you do lunar missions. So you can argue it's sort of smaller missions, but preparing for potentially bigger missions going to the moon and hopefully eventually building a lunar base.
Well, on that note, is there worry about that? Is there concern about the moon opening up to commercial space exploration and what that might mean? Because at the moment, kind of anything goes, doesn't it, on the moon?
In principle, and it begs the question, sort of who owns it and what regulates it. And there's actually a few funny, if you look back in history, there's a few people who've actually claimed ownership of the moon. There was a German guy, Martin Jürgens, who claimed that he was given the moon, his ancestor was given the moon in 1756 by the King of Prussia and King Frederick the Great. Obviously, that got nowhere. And later, there was famously an American guy called Dennis Hope, who started selling real estate on the moon. For $25 an acre. And he sold more than 600 million, allegedly, quote to himself. So he made a lot of money on it. But the bottom line is the moon and space is mainly regulated by what's called the Outer Space Treaty from 1967. It's been 3 more treaties since then. But that's the main thing. But the problem with that is it regulates the relationship between states and not private moon activities or space activities. So there's a big legal gap here.
Oh, well, it gives the lawyers something to do over the next few decades. I should think, Per, as always, really great to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
That's it from us. Thanks for your company. Camilla's up next.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. We've got some heavy rain across southern parts of England and Wales today, turning quite windy as well, but brighter for many of us. This morning, a mixed picture. We've got the heavy rain across parts of Devon, Cornwall, southwest Wales, slowly pushing its way eastwards through the day. Elsewhere, some mist and fog to start with, but this should lift and break. And then there'll be plenty of sunny spells, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. A few showers possible here and perhaps northern England later, but the winds will increase across southern coastal counties of England, perhaps Wales too. Gales for some. Outbreaks of heavy rain could lead to some localised flooding. Temperatures near average for the time of year, so in any sunshine, not feeling too bad further north. As we go through into the evening time, we'll see the heavy rain continue, perhaps transferring more into southeastern areas with the rain becoming lighter across the southwest. Elsewhere, clear spells, temperatures dropping below freezing under the clearest skies in Scotland, holding up under the cloud and the strengthening wind further south and east. So a grey start to Monday here. Outbreaks of rain generally holding on across the far southeast, but eventually clearing later on in the day. Elsewhere, a bright day, mixture of sunny spells, scattered showers. Best of the sunshine across the north and the west of the UK. Quite a keen northeasterly breeze for parts of England, particularly near the coast, which will make it feel quite chilly for the time of year. Temperatures on face value generally near average for the time of year.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
You have a president in President Biden who's not enforcing the law that was passed by Congress. President Obama, criticize him or not, actually enforced the law. And